The boy with the strange symbol never expected that one day he would be framed for killing his foster father. Even his closest childhood friend refused to believe him. As a result, he was sentenced to exile in the so-called Abyss, a land at the world's end. In that arena, he had to fight monsters desperately just to survive. Fortunately, fate still left him a sliver of hope for rebirth. At that moment, he accidentally gained the supernatural power of a spirit medium, able to imbue objects with life and extraordinary strength. Watch how this boy darkens his heart and embarks on a path of vengeance, shattering all prejudice, discrimination, and so-called common sense. He once held hope, believing that with effort, the world could change. The only thing that could counter all this was a seemingly ridiculous incantation. I will drag you all into hell with me. Someone once said that beloved objects hold spirits within them. But for things deemed trash, people only cry when they're thrown away. All it would have taken was a needle and thread to fix that toy. Yet the next second, she tossed it into the trash like it was worthless. Things without value are trash, and trash deserves to be discarded. Humans so easily turn everything into garbage. But when humans themselves become worthless, can they still tell right from wrong? Just then, a figure wrapped in rags appeared. He followed the garbage truck and sneaked into the waste disposal site. A shadow stood silently in the pitch-black room. The guards spotted him and immediately gave chase. This guy looked just like the scavenger mentioned in the recent papers. Drop your weapon and surrender. A single strike left the guard's vision in disarray. He seized the chance to dash into a nearby tunnel and escape. The alarm blared as the gates slowly began to close. Shumi didn't hesitate to open fire. Yet the masked figure effortlessly weaved through the hail of bullets. His movements were agile, swift as lightning. But under the siege of countless guards, the masked figure was still wounded. Stop. He went that way. We must find the troublemaker from the arena. I'm not a gladiator slave, you jerk. Rumors of the arena scavenger quickly spread through the streets. Everyone thought he must have lost his mind. Suddenly, a resident downstairs was staring intently at them. His filthy face was repulsive to look at. But he walked over and pulled open a distant iron gate. You finally returned to your own world. A place starkly divided between inside and out. The upper class lived in comfort and luxury, while criminals could only struggle in agony. Meanwhile, the scavenger from earlier sat in the middle of the road, completely absorbed in fixing a broken lamp. Sneaking off to the dump again, huh? It's Ji and Hua. She worries that one day you might be taken away. But Zuzu couldn't stand seeing the rich discard things that were still usable. However, not everyone is as kind as that girl. A group of delinquent teens covered their noses as they approached. They had smelled the stench in the area as soon as they arrived. The leader warned Jihua to stay away from Zuzu, especially those tattered gloves of his. Just looking at them made them feel sick. They stomped on the lamp the protagonist had just fixed. They blamed everything on his parents, who were once criminals. It turned out this district was specifically for the underclass. And they were all descendants of criminals. Everyone tried to do good, hoping to clear their names and stay away from crime. But because Zuzu's parents had killed so many, nothing could be undone. Just as the bullies were mocking him, Zuzu's expression suddenly turned terrifying. Look closely, those are the eyes of a criminal. Like father, like son, after all. As Zuzu felt heartbroken by their words, Jihua suddenly sat in front of him to comfort him. She said she firmly believed he would never become like them. Her words moved him deeply. But just then, Jihua let out a startled cry. She had spotted the cute toy he had brought back. By then, the protagonist had already fixed it. He didn't plan to sell it, he wanted to give it to that girl. But just then, Jihua was called home by her mother. Because she didn't want her daughter getting too close to him. The gift remained unspoken, awkwardly hanging in the air. That night, when he returned home, he saw his foster father smiling at him. This isn't for sale, it's for you. The protagonist's face turned as red as a ripe apple. Just as he was about to explain, his foster father asked about his trip to the trash heap last night. When he learned it was to earn money, his foster father simply told him to live well. As for hardships, he would handle them. Though they weren't blood-related, years of living together had deepened their bond. You don't have to draw such clear lines. If you really want to thank me, hurry up and confess to Jihua, it'll make me happy too. The protagonist was teased by his foster father and accidentally bumped his injured arm. Fortunately, the glove hid the wound. After his foster father rebandaged it, his hands, covered in scars and bruises, made him wince. Those were scars left by his parents. The worst criminals must be executed immediately. And the abyss is their only destination. It was said that Zuzu's birth father had also been thrown into the abyss. In this mad and absurd world, survival is what matters most. Before he came of age, the protagonist's hands were always grimy and dark. So, you lost your exam paper and your dignity. And the one who pulled you out of the darkness was none other than your foster father. Those brass knuckles banished your weakness and brought you a new life. You owe your foster father a debt you can never repay. Now, he's teasing you again about Chi Hua. Tomorrow, give this to her and confess your feelings. Though his tone was rough, they were joking around, when a shadow outside the door silently watched them. The next day, the protagonist practiced smiling by the pond. No matter how he tried, the grin only made him look terrifying. Your foster father said acting is part of life, but it's easier said than done. Especially with a face that looks like a villain's. You arranged to meet Chi Hua on the mountain outside town. It's also the best spot to see the abyss clearly. They say everything ends up thrown down there. And those who commit crimes face the same fate, this abyss. Nearby, at the execution platform, the leader's cold voice rang out. The guilty man was tossed over without hesitation. As for what happens to those thrown in, the protagonist had no idea. Then, Chi Hua suddenly appeared in front of him, leaving him too nervous to speak. Still, this was the first time he'd ever asked her out. No matter how beautiful the scenery, it still felt unsettling. The upper class had even set up execution platforms in town. One wrong move, and you'd be thrown into the abyss. It was cruel. Everyone here had to witness the punishments. Dudu, I don't want to see you thrown in there. Chi Hua hoped you'd stop doing dangerous things. Because it's very possible you could end up in the abyss. Her words warmed the protagonist's heart like sunlight. Then, the girl accidentally blurted out, I like you, and by the time they realized it, Chi Hua's face was as red as a ripe tomato. The protagonist could hardly believe his luck. His love for the goddess was a perfect two-way street. He immediately gave her the gift, though it had once been discarded. But in Chi Hua's kind hands, even something labeled worthless could bring happiness again. I'll treasure it always. Hearing that, Dudu blushed and ran off, eager to rush home and share the good news with his foster father. But on the way, he suddenly ran into a patrol squad. Dudu just wanted to hurry home and brag about his success. Yet the moment he pushed open the door, the familiar warmth of home was now overshadowed by a stranger standing there. His foster father was pinned to the ground, struck in a vital spot. Even as he rushed forward to save him, the assassin walked away as if nothing had happened. His foster father struggled to call his name one last time. Though Dudu arrived, he thought there might still be a chance to save him. Child, run. Why didn't you run? Dudu, run. Child, run. You must change this hellish, rotting world. Yet, as Dudu wept in despair over his foster father's death, the soldiers from earlier suddenly stormed in. Without question, they arrested Dudu for murder. No matter how he explained, it was futile. When the townspeople heard Dudu was a killer, they flocked to the execution grounds, eager to witness the fate of the so-called monster. The charges were listed one by one, and the protagonist was about to be cast into endless darkness, swallowed whole by the abyss. All Dudu wished for was someone to believe him. After all, he was a victim too. As he looked up, he saw a glimmer of hope. But the crowd around him was filled with hatred. Even the gifts they had exchanged moments ago were thrown to the ground by her. In that moment, the boy felt his heart shatter into pieces. These people, devoid of justice or conscience, were the true rot in the world. Everyone had eyes, ears, and mouths, yet they stood by and let tragedy unfold. I will drag you all into hell, cast you into the depths, and destroy you completely. Just as Zuzua plunged into the abyss's darkness, he awoke to find himself still alive. Unbelievably, he had survived. The air around him reeked of suffocating filth. As he tried to get his bearings, a strange sound suddenly came from behind him. Everything, beasts and humans alike, was dumped into this abyss. And this was indeed a real place. Long ago, when Zuzua first awoke, he had witnessed criminals being thrown into the abyss. He had always wondered what lay beneath the abyss. When he saw the monstrous creature formed from garbage, Zuzua regretted his curiosity. The monster let out a deafening roar. As waves of trash surged toward him, Zuzua could only frantically dodge. But in the next instant, another monster blocked his path. How could something so grotesque exist, made entirely of waste? Before him lay a mountain of bones, and all he felt was hatred for those who had cast him down here. The monster's strike left Zuzua gravely wounded. Though not fatal, the worst part was the poisonous air. He swore to himself he would survive, no matter the cost. Even in a place like this, there had to be a safe haven. But soon, his mind began to spin. In this world, was there truly any place of safety? A world filled with garbage and absurdity. Just then, Zuzua coughed up a mouthful of blood. He felt as if his lungs were about to fall out. The thought of dying in vain again filled him with despair. Just as his consciousness was about to fade, Zito's figure suddenly appeared before him. Then, he suddenly felt a surge of power within him. At the very least, he had to survive until the day he cleared his name, and kill Zito's murderer, along with the enemy before him. Power surged into his hands, and Zuzwa easily blocked the monster's attack this time. Then, with a single punch, he sent it flying. Meanwhile, a man holding an umbrella was quietly observing the situation. He had already noticed something unusual about Zuzwa. At that moment, Zuzwa was attacking with all his might, leaving the monster defenseless. Yet, the stench emanating from the monster was overwhelming. Zuzwa couldn't understand why his body had become so light. Even when knocked back by the monster's attack, he remained unharmed and could stand up immediately. But the poisonous fumes kept seeping into his body, causing Zuzwa to cough up blood again. His pupils began to glow red. As two monsters closed in, a bolt of red lightning split the dark sky. Wielding a sharp piece of metal, Zuzwa cleaved through the monster. He thought he could finally catch his breath. But in the distance, an even larger monster was staring at him. Its gaze was fixed, as if ready to devour its prey. Zuzwa thought he was doomed until the man with the umbrella suddenly appeared. The two locked eyes, and the atmosphere turned awkward. Without a word, the man tossed Zuzwa a gas mask. With it, Zuzwa could finally breathe normally. But when Zuzwa pressed him with endless questions, the man only gestured for silence, saying nothing. The more the man acted like this, the more curious Zuzwa became. Zuzwa wanted to figure out what this godforsaken place really was. Seeing him fidgeting relentlessly, the man lost his patience. He shouted, "This is the real surface. All this garbage was dumped here by those so-called heavenly beings." He kept telling Zuzwa to be quiet because these monsters had no eyes, they hunted by sound. Because of that, we've been spotted by those things. They're called the barbarian beasts. As you can see, they're monsters made of garbage. No matter how many times you fight them, they won't stay dead. At first, he planned to help Zuzwa escape. But it seems we won't get away without a fight. The umbrella in his hand suddenly transformed into something entirely new. Zuzwa couldn't believe his eyes. The man charged straight into the horde of monsters, launching a fierce assault. With a single strike, he tore a monster to shreds. And those shreds were slowly losing their vitality. What in the world was that umbrella? But the man didn't answer, he only watched the surrounding monsters calmly. Zuzwa watched in stunned silence. It seemed he was using a special technique reserved only for disaster-level threats. If you had that kind of power, you might actually stand a chance of surviving here. After the attack, the man leaped high into the air. Then, he drove his weapon straight into the monster's head. In an instant, it shattered into pieces. After taking care of the monster, he was overjoyed to see Zuzu still alive. The name's Inkue. Just a regular scavenger, that's all. No sooner had he spoken than he instinctively removed his mask. How do you plan to compensate me for this? Zuzu passed out from exhaustion. While unconscious, he encountered Zito again. It was the same familiar scene, his body drenched, as if tortured. Yet Zito's face showed no trace of resentment. Zuzu remembered something his adoptive father once said. If you cherish an object long enough, a soul will come to dwell within it. He began to understand that objects, too, could have life. Though he wasn't sure if it was true, cherishing all things seemed like a good principle. Like that towel you once used to wipe yourself, perhaps it was the soul within that made it clean you so well. From then on, Zuzu started seeing everything around him in a new light. He learned to treasure every item he used. Before long, Zuzu woke up only to find himself tied up by Inkue. He wanted to return to the world above, but Inkue only sighed regretfully, saying it was impossible. That so-called world above was what people called the heavenly realm. But honestly, just the tens of thousands of meters in altitude made it impossible. And on top of that, the heavenly realm was constantly moving. In short, returning was nearly impossible, but Zuzu refused to give up. No matter how much Inkue tried to persuade him, Zuzu remained stubborn about finding a way back. He was convinced Inkue knew some way to reach the heavenly realm. Tell me everything about this world, the monsters earlier, and the strange power you have. Now, Zuzu had only one obsession. He wanted to gather enough information to bring down the entire heavenly realm. Unless Inkue revealed everything, he'd rather die than speak. Seeing his stubbornness, Inkue decided to let him experience the horrors of this world firsthand. He dragged Zuzu to a place marked with strange symbols. After doing this, Inkue dusted off his hands and walked away, as if nothing had happened. Inkue said he wouldn't interfere with what happened next. Before Zuzu could react, a figure suddenly appeared behind him. At first, they thought it was just an abandoned child. But after seeing Zuzu's unusual clothes, the man in red became visibly excited. After confirming Zuzu was truly from the world above, since this was their first time seeing a living person from the heavenly realm, he was completely baffled. Was the other person even speaking the same language as them? Or maybe it's all a scam. The way those people looked at him, they didn't even seem like they were looking at a living person. The man said he'd collected the corpses of heavenly beings many times before, so he was used to it by now. But tying up a child like this, it's too much. It's just too much. Just when Zuzwa thought he'd met a good person, the man in red not only didn't free him but added another layer of rope and locked him in the carriage. Only then did he realize he'd walked right into a trap. These people only saw him as a commodity to sell. From his body to his organs, even his clothes could fetch a high price. Zuzwa finally understood human nature was the same everywhere. That fake smile made him want to vomit. The reason these people craved heavenly beings so much was because they hated everyone from the heavenly realm. They not only littered carelessly, but the trash kept piling up, polluting the air. Worse, it bred monsters like the man Mo, and people were killed by them, crushed under garbage heaps, or lost their homes to polluted land. Such tragedies were commonplace here. If anyone saw Zuzwa, someone would surely pay a high price to buy him, then torture him until he was worthless. The man even laughed, saying he'd go watch the spectacle after selling him. Then, he dumped a pile of trash in front of Zuzwa. He planned to use it to vent his rage at that rabid black cat, making everyone furious. But just as he was tormenting Zuzwa, something unexpected happened. The man screamed in agony, as if his skin had been flayed off. Next, Zuzwa bit off his finger, swallowing flesh and leftover food scraps along with it. His only goal now was to survive. Whether in the upper or lower realms, everyone he met was just human garbage in disguise. Zuzwa roared in fury, shaking heaven and earth. A crimson aura enveloped his entire body. Stop judging others with your twisted perspectives. Stop labeling people so carelessly. The sound of breaking chains echoed all around. He looked like a blood-red deity rising from a pool of gore. And this was exactly what Gui had been waiting for. It seemed his prediction was spot on. Zuzwa was indeed someone with hidden power. If you learn to cherish the items you use, one day, they may develop a soul of their own. When that happens, they'll willingly lend you their strength. Those who can grant life to objects and awaken their hidden potential are called realm bridgers or awakeners. But the man in red, consumed by jealousy, immediately ordered his men to kill Zuzwa. He knew that if he severed the connection between the realm bridger and the objects, the power would fade, just as he was about to finish off that so-called monster. And Gui stepped in just in time to stop him. Because if Zuzwa had gone too far, he wouldn't have been able to clean up the mess. Zuzwa remembered everything he had just done. He knew all this power came from the gloves. What Gui had said earlier was just a test. He wanted to confirm if Zuzwa truly had potential, and now his goal was achieved. He hoped Zuzwa would join their cleanup crew. Trash surged from all directions, forcing Zuzwa to dodge the attacks. But then, another monster blocked his path. What was this pile of trash fused together? Why did such a thing exist? Before him lay pale skeletons, their hearts filled only with hatred for those who had abandoned them here. The monster struck him hard, but luckily, it wasn't fatal. The real danger was the toxic air here. He told himself he had to survive even in a place like this, there must be a safe hiding spot. But soon, he began feeling dizzy and disoriented. In this world overflowing with trash, was there really a safe place? This bizarre, garbage-filled world. Zuzwa coughed up blood, feeling like his lungs were about to burst. Just as he thought he was about to die in vain, the image of his adoptive father, Zito, suddenly appeared before him. Then, he felt a surge of power welling up inside him. He had to hold on, survive until the day he could clear his name. And that murderer who had killed his adoptive father right before his eyes. Power gathered in his hands. With a light wave, he deflected the monster's attack, then sent it flying with a single punch. Meanwhile, a man holding an old umbrella watched it all unfold. He had long sensed that Zuzwa was acting unusually. At that moment, Zuzwa was fiercely striking a monster, its foul stench nearly making people faint. Zuzwa didn't understand why he suddenly felt as light as a swallow. With his lungs aching from the impact, Zuzwa coughed up another mouthful of blood. A flicker of red flashed in his pupils. Caught between two monsters, a bolt of red lightning tore through the air. Zuzwa grabbed a sheet of iron and split the monster in half. He thought he could finally catch his breath, but in the distance, an even larger monster was staring at him with hungry eyes. Zuzwa thought he was doomed this time until the man with the umbrella appeared. The two locked eyes, the moment feeling awkward. Then, the man handed Zuzwa a gas mask. Only then could he breathe normally. It seemed even in this abyss-like place, some could survive. But Zuzwa's relentless questioning made the man signal for him to stay quiet. The more mysterious things became, the more Zuzwa wanted to uncover the truth about this place. When Zuzwa refused to quiet down and kept making a fuss, the man finally lost his patience. He shouted that this was the true surface. All the garbage here had been dumped by the people of the heavenly realm. He told Zuzwa to shut up because the eyeless monsters hunted by sound. Thanks to you, they've already noticed us. Those things are called garbage monsters, just as you see, they're abominations. A fate of waste, no matter how many times you fall, it's all in vain. At first, he had planned to take Zuzwa away, but it seemed escape wouldn't be possible without a fight. Then, the tattered umbrella in his hand suddenly transformed into a new shape. Zuzwa was stunned, unable to believe his eyes as the man charged at the monsters, tearing them apart on contact. The fragments of lifeless creatures vanished in an instant. How was that umbrella so fast? The man didn't answer, only calmly watching the surrounding monsters. Zuzwa was speechless. It seemed he had used a unique technique from the lower realm. If I could have power like that, maybe I could survive here. After the strike, the man leapt high, driving his weapon straight into the monster's head, reducing it to fragments. After dealing with the threat, seeing Zuzwa still alive, he visibly relaxed. I'm Engine, just an ordinary janitor. You took off the mask without thinking. How do you plan to compensate me? Zuzwa froze. In his dream, he saw Zito again, drenched from head to toe. But there wasn't a trace of anger on Zito's face. He remembered his foster father once saying that if you cherish an object long enough, a soul may dwell within it. It could be understood as objects having lives of their own. Though he didn't know if it was true, cherishing things was always the right thing to do. Like the towel that helped dry you off. Because a soul resided in it, it could do its job. From then on, Zuzwa began to cherish everything around him, using them with care. Not long after, Zuzwa woke up, only to find himself being tightly gripped by Engine. Zuzwa said he wanted to go back up, but Engine sighed and said it was impossible. What people called above was actually the heavenly realm. The heavenly realm is constantly shifting, even at 10,000 meters above. Going back now is completely impossible, but Zuzwa clearly isn't ready to give up. Despite Engine urging him to settle down here, Zuzwa still insists on returning above. He must know other ways to ascend. Tell me everything about this world, those monsters earlier, and your powers. Zuzwa was stubbornly fixated, determined to gather enough information to defy the heavenly realm. He wouldn't say a word until Engine finished answering. Seeing his relentless pestering, Engine decided to show him the true horrors of this world firsthand. Then he tossed Zuzwa onto a beach with a signpost. After doing so, Engine dusted off his hands and said he had no right to interfere further. Just as Zuzwa stood confused, a figure suddenly appeared behind him. At first, they thought Zuzwa was an abandoned child, but upon seeing his strange clothes, the man in red grew excited. When they learned Zuzwa had truly come from above, they were stunned. It was their first time seeing a living person from the heavenly realm. People from the heavenly realm speak the same language as us. Maybe he's a fake. Their eyes showed no regard for Zuzwa as a person. The man said he often dealt with killing those from above, which explained his coldness. But tying up a child like this was going too far. Just when Zuzwa thought he'd met a good person, the man in red didn't unlock him. Instead, he added another lock, trapping you inside the carriage. Only then did you realize you'd fallen into a trap. He only saw you as merchandise to sell. He wanted to squeeze every bit of value from you, even planning to sell your clothes at a high price. Zuzwa suddenly understood, greed was everywhere. That hypocritical smile made you sick. Why were they so desperate for someone from the heavenly realm? Because of their hatred, of course. They carelessly dumped trash, which piled up, polluted the air, and spawned a horde of garbage monsters. Here, people were killed by monsters, crushed by trash, or lost their homes to pollution. If those people saw Zuzwa, they'd eagerly pay a high price to buy him, then torment him until he was broken. After selling you, he even planned to watch the spectacle. With that, the man dumped a pile of trash in front of Zuzwa, intending to use it to torture him. His twisted, manic expression sent a chill down your spine. But just as he began tormenting Zuzwa, something unexpected happened. The man let out a blood-curdling scream. Zuzwa bit off 2 of his fingers, flesh and all, and swallowed them along with the rotten food. For you, the only goal now was survival. Whether above or below, the people you met were equally despicable. Zuzwa roared, the deafening sound radiating a crimson shockwave. Don't label others so carelessly with your prejudices. The chain snapped, and you descended like a blood-soaked demon. This was exactly what Engine wanted to see. It seems his guess was correct. Zuzu truly is a gifted individual. If you cherish and make good use of the items in your hands, one day a soul will reside within them. When that happens, they will lend you their power. Giving life to objects and awakening their power, that is what a spirit medium does. Overcome with shame and rage, the man in red immediately ordered his men to kill Zuzu. He knew that cutting off the spirit medium's connection to the objects would stop him. But as soon as the lock was broken, Zuzu grabbed a nearby car cover and used it as a weapon. In the end, all of his men were defeated by Zuzu. Just as Zuzu was about to finish off the monstrous figure, Engine stepped in to stop him. Because if things went too far, the consequences would be uncontrollable. Zuzu remembered everything that had just happened. You realize all of this was because of the power from these gloves. Engine said it was just a test. He wanted to confirm if you truly possessed this power. Now, his goal has been achieved. This child carries deep hatred within him. The first time you faced your master's teachings, you repaid him with something unspeakable. Meanwhile, a mysterious operative on a secret mission suddenly received a message from Nkue. He said they had just discovered a rare talent. The man listened with skepticism. What mattered was that the boy had been found in the restricted zone. And his abilities were unlike anything they had seen before. So I recruited him into the cleanup crew. Just as he was about to argue, the sight of the bald doctor nearly made him faint. The doctor also thought this guy was incredibly lucky to have survived being lost in the restricted zone. Before that, he had been caught up in all sorts of trouble, even kidnapped by human traffickers. What terrible luck. The worst part was that these two kept talking over each other, leaving no room for me to speak. And that loud bald one turned out to be a woman. Fortunately, Dudu's treatment was finally over. He was deeply grateful for Nkue's help. But now, all he wanted was to return to the heavenly realm as soon as possible to report. However, Nkue told him to think carefully about finding a way back to the lower realm, because nothing comes for free. After a few days, Dudu finally regained some of his strength. He had eaten leftover food from the kitchen earlier and ended up vomiting everywhere. Now, at the sight of proper food, he couldn't hold back. At first, Dudu thought this place was full of trash, but there was a kind of emotion called longing that fused with the garbage. Then, at a certain moment, those things suddenly transformed into energy, and it was this energy that triggered a strange ability, creating the garbage monsters. Because they resented humans for abandoning them, they would attack any living person on sight, and ordinary weapons could barely harm them. Their core was made of longing, but if the same principle was applied, if someone cherished an object and used it for a long time, it would also accumulate lingering emotions. We call this kind of power popularity, and it's what allows us to defeat those trash monsters with cores made of longing. Those who possess this ability are known as realm walkers. These individuals are indispensable members of the cleanup crew. Zuozua asked if joining the cleanup crew would mean they could teach him how to return to the heavenly realm. Little did he know, Nkue had no idea how to get back either. However, their superior was well informed and surely had what Zuozua needed. This made the protagonist feel like he was being watched. Then, Nkue asked about his popularity gloves. Unexpectedly, it was these very gloves that his foster father had used to protect him until the very end. Seeing how much Zuozua treasured them, Nkue knew he hadn't misjudged him. Honestly, it's easy to say you should cherish what you love, but not everyone can actually do it. Zuozua's gloves had already been infused with his soul. As long as he continued to treasure and use them, he could draw on the power within. It's a bit late to say this now, but you saved me and helped me a lot. Here's a little money to help you get started. Spend it wisely. Zuozua was so surprised the other person was giving him money, he almost thought he was an angel. That was until Nkue admitted the money, including medical and food expenses, had come from selling his clothes. Nkue's nonchalant arrogance made Zuozua snap on the spot. But Nkue had only done it for his own good. Now, he was handing Zuozua over to the person responsible for training him. As the protagonist watched him leave with dissatisfaction, Zuozua immediately chased after him. But in the dim alley, he couldn't catch up to him. Then he spotted something fork-like nearby, grabbed it, and used it to snag the little cat. After all that effort, stay still. Give that back, you little troublemaker. Zuozua had assumed the rotten stick was abandoned, but it turned out to have an owner. At first, he thought the man had come to pick a fight. But then he saw how carefully the man cradled the stick. Plus, he wore the same badge as Nkue. Only then did Zuozua realize the man was also part of the cleanup crew. Though this guy's temper wasn't exactly pleasant. What he didn't know was that this was the very instructor Nkue had arranged for him. The man said he'd teach him a lesson and immediately raised the stick, bringing it down hard. If you dare take someone else's valuables, you'd better be prepared for the consequences. The man, who called himself Zanka, would be his mentor after joining the cleanup crew. And the first lesson was the most basic one. Stealing gets you punished, but Zuozua still tried to argue his way out. Zanka grew angrier, even insulting his parents for not raising him properly. Clearly, he knew nothing about Zuozua's past. Yet he still acted like he had the right to lecture him, making Zuozua's eyes glow red with anger. Calm down first. You need to consider other people's feelings. He remembered his foster father's advice to stay calm and realized he had been in the wrong. Taking Zanka's valuable item without permission, how was that any different from stealing? Because if someone took his gloves, Zuozua would fly into a rage too. So the protagonist decided to take the initiative to apologize, hoping Zanka would forgive his impulsiveness. Unexpectedly, this guy responds better to kindness than toughness. Not only did he suppress his anger, but he also politely apologized to Zuozua. He explained that the wooden stick was his, and he got anxious after Zuozua took it. Seeing the other's attitude do a complete 180, he realized his foster father's teachings were indeed effective. And perhaps this was the first time he had ever reconciled with someone. The The feeling was amazing, and Zanka spoke to him warmly. He said that even though things got unpleasant earlier, he was still welcome to join the cleanup crew. Right, his foster father had said to show him a poker face. At first, he wasn't used to it, but he had practiced quite a bit. He put on an air of a smug expert. Rather than joining, I'm just here to help until the goal is achieved. Zanka's smile froze instantly, and the once lively and cheerful boy suddenly looked ridiculous. Zuzwa immediately knew he had upset the other guy. But to him, this was the best smile he had ever seen. Zanka was baffled. This wasn't a smile at all, it was a provocation. Seeing this, Zuzwa quickly reflected on what he had done wrong. Was it because his eyes were too wide, or because he showed too many teeth? Then came an upgraded version of the awkward smile. That punchable face didn't need any compliments. As a result, Zanka really lost his temper. He thought after being a bit nicer, this kid would start acting arrogant. Little did he know this kid was a real piece of work, though even Zuzwa found it hard to understand. That old man was clearly someone with unpredictable moods, not to mention his expressions. And now he dared to criticize others for their looks. Zanka didn't care if he was Ego's genius. He fought against the horned beasts on the front lines every day. Yet here you are, talking big, saying you're just here to help until the goal is met. And with that annoying smirk of yours. It seems your so-called goal isn't anything worthwhile. Hearing this, Zuzwa felt a sting, as he carried the expectations of the Tail Clan. He had struggled to live this long, hoping to change the world. It seems Zanka had misunderstood him. From the first time he saw him, he had found him extremely irritating. Perhaps only a fight could settle their anger. But then Zanka froze. Your spiritual energy clearly took the form of a pair of gloves. Yet you could freely convert anything you touched into spiritual energy. No wonder Ego called you a rare genius. But even a genius would struggle to defeat someone of extraordinary skill. Zanka suddenly launched an attack from above. Your movements are too slow, genius. All you've got is that spiritual energy. Zuzwa tried to react but was caught off guard by the stick. In the end, he took a heavy blow and collapsed to the ground, unable to move. It seems you were just relying on brute force. What is this? Zuzu didn't even realize what he had grabbed, he just used it without a second thought. Seeing him charge again, Zanka was terrified out of his wits. Just looking at what was on it made his stomach turn. Zanka even caught a whiff of the strong, foul stench. Ha! Seeing him flee in panic, Zuzu looked confused. He had no idea what it was for, but it sure seemed powerful. Zanka was on the verge of breaking down. He never expected someone to be so clueless. One ran, the other chased. No matter what, Zuzu wasn't letting Zanka get away. Just as Zanka was distracted, he slipped and fell. Zanka completely lost it. When Ague returned to pick them up, he found Zanka looking utterly defeated. On the way back, Ague laughed until tears streamed down his face. He never imagined the fight would end with a face-off involving that. Zanka had lost all dignity, while Zuzu began questioning his life choices. Both their convictions crumbled, leaving the audience with an unforgettable moment from their first clash. After laughing it off, Ague formally introduced Zanka to him. From now on, Zanka would be Zuzu's direct coach. After getting Ague's nod, Zuzu finally calmed down a little. You must be Zuzu, right? Your hair is really something. I'm impressed. Zuzwa never expected there to be a girl working in the cleaning corps. Even more shocking, she had attacked him right after they met. Zuzwa was stunned. This place was amazing. He never thought a woman would take the initiative to flirt with him. Then, Brother Gue led Zuzwa to the cleaning corps headquarters. From here on out, he would finally begin his new life. The road was lined with ruins and garbage as far as the eye could see. After passing through a long tunnel, they were surprised to find such a vast space inside. The strange symbol atop the building seemed to confirm this was no ordinary place. The short-haired girl in glasses reading an adult magazine was the receptionist, Sai. Before any new recruit could officially join the cleaning corps, they had to pass her inspection. Her ability was extremely unique. With just a glance, she could uncover someone's background and gauge their potential. Brother Gue said Sai's spiritual core was her glasses. Once activated, they greatly enhanced her dynamic vision, allowing her to see through appearances to the truth. But just as Sai was about to examine Zuzwa, an unexpected resistance repelled her. This was the first time she had encountered such a thing while using her ability. It was also the first time she had failed to assess someone. Zuzwa's physique and spiritual attributes were outstanding. However, his coordination with spiritual energy still needed refinement. Only battle could forge his skills. This is the only way. Also, this kid still has filth stuck to his neck. In an instant, Gue couldn't hold back anymore. He couldn't get rid of it anytime soon. As they walked, Gue suddenly noticed something unnatural about Sai. It was as if he hadn't brought back a person, but a terrifying monster. Along the way, Gue introduced the current state of the cleanup team to Zuzwa. Besides the permanent members, they also had a security squad and logistics department, totaling around 100 people. At first, Gue thought no one was at headquarters today, but later realized most of the team was waiting there. So, Gue decided to take him to meet the boss first. As for Zuzua's insistence on returning to the heavenly realm, Gue told him to think it over carefully. Since the boss was an intelligence expert, information was a valuable resource no matter where you were. Before offering something in exchange, he could work to pay for the information. Also, it was best not to ask the boss about his spiritual energy when they met, because no one had ever figured out what the boss's spiritual energy was. But just as Zuzua adjusted his mindset and pushed the door open, he found the room empty. Just then, Sai ran over. It turned out the boss was away on business. Inkayuer acted as if it were perfectly normal, since the boss was always elusive, appearing and disappearing without a trace. Sorry, Zuzua, it looks like the boss isn't here. I'm here now, what should we do? Sai had no idea when the boss would return this time. Anyway, the boss was quite unpredictable, so this time Zio suggested letting Zuzua work as an intern to observe the job. Since the boss wasn't around, he couldn't officially join the cleanup team yet. For now, he'd follow her and work together, and Zio seemed quite interested in Zuzua. This mission was near the Jinglan district. A small-scale invasion of monstrous waste. Seeing that Zuzua knew nothing about the mortal realm, it seemed Gue hadn't explained the situation clearly. Sai gave him a scrutinizing look, as if reviewing a hiring file. Then she told Zuzua that the world was divided into human safe zones and polluted areas occupied by monstrous waste. The place where Zuzua fell was the most dangerous part of the polluted zone, called the Forbidden Zone. There were currently 6 confirmed Forbidden Zones. Ordinary people would almost certainly perish if they entered, as they were filled with monsters even interdimensional beings struggled to handle. So when Gue was patrolling there and coincidentally saved Zuzua, who was at his wit's end, it sounded like a strange tale. When entering polluted areas, it was best to wear a filter mask. Breathing in too many toxins would make you sick. In the Forbidden Zone, an unmasked ordinary person could only breathe for about 15 minutes at most. After covering the basics, he followed Ziju to the scene. From above, the place was completely covered in waste. Back in the Forbidden Zone, he had already reached his limit of endurance. Zuzua never expected to find humans actually living here. The people above either don't know about this or are deliberately dumping trash and people down here. What others see as mountains of garbage, Zuzua sees as piles of valuable treasures. Here, Zuzua also met hidden support team members like Ziju. Though they lack the abilities of realm crossers, their physiques are astonishingly strong. Just a light handshake made Zuzua feel like his fingers were about to break. And they are the most reliable allies of realm crossers. Zuzua couldn't help but doubt himself. But thinking this was just a simple task, maybe it wouldn't be too much for him. Just then, a teammate sounded the alarm. A strange, antelope-like garbage creature emerged from the trash heap. But Ziju noticed these creatures were docile, slow-moving, and not very strong. They tend to repeat the same attack pattern. Perfect for new recruits to practice chasing, Ziju said, and Zuzua agreed. Looks like not all garbage monsters are the same. Not docile at all. Look, something more dangerous is coming. Stay calm, what's the point of staying calm now? Zuzua panicked and shouted for backup, but Ziju told him not to worry. This is just a slightly stronger version of the small fry. Basically still moving targets for new recruits. Dust swirled in front of them, but Ziju remained unfazed. If we clear them out in one go, we might even finish early. Though Zuzua hadn't officially joined the cleanup crew, a welcome party wouldn't hurt. Watching Ziju handle the monsters with ease, Zuzua couldn't help but admire these fearless fighters. To survive here, you've got to stay calm at the very least. Whether it's a Gue or Jianku, they all exude an incredibly steady presence. It seems the area where I fall short compared to the experts is precisely this. Indeed, I've learned quite a bit during this internship. But the colossal creature before him instantly shattered the little confidence Zuzu had just built up. No matter, Zuzu thought Ziju would surely help him stay calm. It's just a bit bigger, that's all. Doesn't look like much. The next second, Ziju drew the terrifying weapon in front of him. Zuzu suddenly felt like he was being locked onto. The spiritual energy in Ziju's hands emitted a dark green glow. Before dealing with that giant, she had to clear out these smaller minions first. She tossed the scissors into the air, and they instantly grew in size. Then Ziju grabbed them, and her momentum exploded. A single spinning kick sent countless monster heads flying. All Zuzu saw was a flash of green light. The decapitated monsters collapsed in waves. Ziju said this was her true strength. Normally, scissors are handheld tools, but in Ziju's hands, they became a weapon for battle. Only the strength in her legs could withstand such a powerful opening and closing motion. The way spiritual energy is used varies from person to person, with endless possibilities. Ziju reminded him not to let his guard down just because it was an internship. With a single punch, he knocked down the monster that was about to ambush Zuzu. Though he wasn't a spirit communicator, he could still handle things in his own way. He crushed the monster's outer shell, leaving it unable to move. Then he left the final blow to Zuzu. This was the support team's fighting style. Once a monster lost its ability to act, it was handed over to the spirit communicator for the finishing strike. Watching their seamless teamwork, Zuzu couldn't help but feel admiration. No wonder Jiangku had gotten angry at his words earlier. They were fighting for their lives, doing things ordinary people couldn't. The once confident Zuzu fell silent as Ziju quickly cleared the outer monsters. The giant before them was her next target. If there was no spirit communicator to deliver the final blow, Ziju instructed the next teammate to dismantle the monster. That was the only way to ensure it wouldn't move again. Just then, a support team member ran toward the monster only for the dead creature to suddenly lunge at him in a frenzy. The man was knocked down instantly. No, that can't be happening. Run! At that moment, Zuzu rushed forward to shield him. Though he had only joined the cleanup team for information, he couldn't just stand by and watch a teammate die. He quickly activated his ability, turning the iron rod into spiritual energy. But due to his inexperience, he accidentally turned the rod into spikes, nearly harming the support member behind him. In that instant, Zuzu's mind went blank. He even forgot how to use his ability. But the monster wouldn't give him a second chance. It broke free from its restraints and lunged at Zuzu. Mei reacted just in time, pulling him back. But for now, the giant beast still can't be subdued by Ziju. Because it has some eerie trait, even when split in half, it can recover instantly. Generally, demonic beasts have weaknesses like animals, but this one regenerates no matter how you cut it. So, Ziju decides to hack it into paralysis first before figuring out how to deal with it. The support team also agrees to update the intel and warn nearby towns. Zuzwa stands frozen, regretting his earlier actions. Clearly, he wanted to be someone useful to those around him. Then, Ziju swings straight at the beast's hair. Since she has scissors, the first thing to do is obviously a haircut. Next, she'll clean up this monster's head. Might as well shave it bald. I don't have clippers, so this might take a while. Water suddenly seeps from the surrounding pipes. Something on the beast's head seems to be glowing. Seeing it desperately protect that spot, Ziju senses something off. Those pipes look like they're guarding the glowing object. But Ziju doesn't care if it goes berserk. She charges forward to dig out the glowing thing. The beast fakes a shockwave, causing the ground to shake violently. Zuzwa loses his footing and falls into a ditch. He's still blaming himself for not mastering his power yet. After all, he finally gained the strength to avenge himself. Just as he's about to plunge into the abyss, a large hand grabs him. Zuzwa forgot he now has allies who should support each other in times of danger. Meanwhile, Ziju's battle with the beast nears its end. She stabs something strange inside its head. Without that thing, the beast finally collapses and crumbles. But to everyone's surprise, what controlled the beast was a severely damaged artifact. Just as everyone is still processing this, a silent crisis looms over Zuzwa. Who are you? Zenka just woke up to find the usually quiet headquarters in chaos. When he asks what everyone's busy with, Ziju reminds him tonight's the welcome feast for Zuzwa joining the team. To Zenka, this group is just using Zuzwa's welcome as an excuse to drink. Though an occasional break isn't so bad. But amid the noisy crowd, Zenka notices Zuzwa, the guest of honor, slumped over the table looking dejected. Yesterday's mission left him struggling to wield his artifact's power. He has to accept the gap between his ideals and reality. Now, they bring up the beast Ziju defeated yesterday. This was their first encounter with such a beast, and its core turned out to be an object. Usually, demonic beasts are born from obsession, but this one felt like an artifact to Ziju. Honestly, Ziju felt a flicker of fear at one point. Some things require investigative work, and she always leaves those to her superiors. At this moment, Ziju was just sitting quietly in the corner of the room. His hands fidgeted with his gloves, his gaze distant, when Guzi walked up to him. Though it was his first mission as a new recruit, he felt Ziju had already done exceptionally well. Not only had he kept his cool in a crisis, but he had also saved a teammate. Yet to Ziju, he still felt like he had dragged the whole team down. Despite having the ability and high expectations placed on him, he wasn't mature enough to help everyone. Back in the heavenly realm, trouble seemed to follow him wherever he went. And his foster father always had to clean up the mess. He should have returned to the heavenly realm to report by now. But he hadn't improved every time, he had to rely on others to bail him out. Just as Ziju was feeling utterly useless, Guzi suddenly spoke up to thank him. Because often, at first glance, people saw their logistics team as nothing but deadweight. But from the first time he met Ziju, he knew this kid was different. The young man he had saved yesterday wasn't someone who joined the cleanup crew just to slaughter monsters. But only realm walkers could truly eliminate those creatures. That was why, ever since joining the logistics team, he had been striving to become a realm walker. So, Guzi thought he could set aside his ambition to grow stronger for now and reconsider what he originally wanted to do. Just like before the upheaval in the heavenly realm, he must have had something he always wanted to do. Lost in thought, Zizhu realized that even after falling to the mortal world, he had still lived so peacefully. In that moment, when someone ruffled his hair, Zhuozhuo suddenly felt a familiar warmth. But that tender moment was interrupted by Intui's sudden appearance. Then, Guzi helped him pull himself together. No matter what, tonight's banquet wouldn't be the same without its main guest. Perhaps Zhuozhuo had truly lost an important loved one. Yet in that moment, the emptiness in his heart seemed to be filled by something. That man was Gubu, a man who gave his all for what he wanted to do. Do whatever you want, but don't overcomplicate things. I can't make any promises about this. That human trafficker had once driven Zhuozhuo to despair. He was beaten within an inch of his life. Even his own parents wouldn't show their faces. He could only beg pitifully for his life. But a monster who had outlived its usefulness had no reason to exist. The man had graying hair with black tips and dark circles under his eyes. He was one of the Heavenly Realm's realm walkers. A few hours later, Semi suddenly received a new assignment. This time, Zhanga was leading the team, and seeing Zhuozhuo among them, he looked puzzled. Zhanga clearly didn't want Zhuozhuo to come along, even though he was technically his mentor. He believed that in the cleanup crew, only those who had officially passed their probation could participate in missions. But Semio wanted Zhuozhuo to join them. She did this because this mission involves a merchant crossing through a contaminated zone. And the main cargo was a survivor who fell from the heavenly realm. Finding a living heavenly realm native is clearly a rare occurrence. So she thought Zhuozhuo would be interested, but didn't expect to see his hesitation. She left it up to him to decide whether to go along. Zhuozhuo knew he hadn't fully mastered his powers yet. If he went this time, he might drag the whole team down again. But this was a great opportunity to gather clues. Zhang Xia just stared at him deeply, saying nothing. Originally, Simio planned to invite Nkui to join this mission. But his schedule was packed with other tasks, so he had to drop the idea. Though he said having Zhang Xia there would be no problem. In an instant, Zhang Xia felt a surge of determination, becoming full of energy. On the way to their destination, Zhuozhuo wondered why GZ didn't carry a weapon. Actually, he did have a small knife. But fighting monsters barehanded had become his habit. Now his teammate revealed this quirk of his. Before every mission, he would pray for everyone's safe return. It was surprising that such a tough guy would do something so thoughtful. Though the talisman was just a cheap one sold in a shop, GZ treasured it dearly. Just then, someone claiming to be the client suddenly appeared on the road. She said she'd take them to where monsters often looted gold. Zhuozhuo immediately asked her about the heavenly realm native. Because right now, information was as valuable as gold to him. The woman said she had just happened to find and save him. He had been unconscious the whole way and couldn't speak a word. But the woman seemed very concerned about the heavenly realm native. She was definitely lying, she probably wanted to sell him. She claimed she saved him out of personal grudges. Zhang Xia was experienced and only half believed her. Because monsters instinctively attack any living person they see. Yet this woman was completely unharmed. Especially since the monster's movements had been so strange lately. But all of this had happened after Zhuozhuo descended to the mortal realm. There might be unknown secrets behind it all. Then, the woman led them to a house. She said the monsters were inside. Zhang Xia immediately warned everyone to stay alert. But upon entering, Zhang Xia saw someone sitting in the room. Suddenly, the client pushed Zhuozhuo from behind. Hurry, we need to move fast. What's the rush? What's wrong with her? Zhang Xia felt something was increasingly off. After all, this could very well be a monster's lair. But upon closer inspection, the figure on the chair was just a strange doll. Suddenly, the ground beneath them split open. Before the four could react, they fell into a deep pit. Hurry, where's the heavenly realm native? Is everyone okay? What if the heavenly realm native was taken? Seeing their goal achieved, the mastermind finally revealed their true form. In the distance, two purple lanterns lit up. Zhanga finally understood what was going on. It turned out all of this was a trap set by the bandit gang, targeting Zizhu directly. Gazite said they were indeed a bandit gang, and the worst part was they had many middlemen. Gazite immediately ordered someone to find an escape route, while he and Fu Luo would stay behind to protect Zizhu. With the enemy hidden and us exposed, we must be extra cautious. Those two middlemen will be handled by Zanska. He was already used to dealing with such troubles, but Zizhu didn't want to be a deserter. But for now, his safety had to be the top priority. At first, Zizhu thought he could help Zanska, but Gazite reminded him to stay sharp. This wasn't like the human traffickers before. Now, they needed to create distance. To prevent the enemy from using unknown abilities against them. Though reluctant, Jizu chose to follow the advice this time. Zanska fought against 2 bandit enforcers without breaking a sweat. They kept sending wave after wave, all targeting the Celestial. But he was already prepared for this. The thought of them daring to provoke him if they sold Jizu as a live specimen, these scum would never face justice. But the enemy smirked, because they didn't want to sell Jizu. They wanted to extract more secrets about the Celestial realm from him. Capturing someone alive was better than fumbling in the dark, like how he crossed that mysterious boundary. The word boundary caught Zanska's attention, because he knew they weren't referring to the Forbidden Zone. As for what they planned to do with Jizu, Zanska didn't bother guessing, but if they dared drag him into this mess, they'd better be ready for his wrath. No trash monsters here, but mud puppets? They had plenty. The woman who led them earlier, along with the trap just now, were all schemes by these bandit scum. But he'd never backed down from a one-on-one fight. His spiritual energy shifted form in an instant. These limp mud dolls posed no threat to him. But the woman suddenly laughed triumphantly because among the mud puppets, real people were mixed in. Jianggu hadn't expected this move. The weasel-faced man who'd mocked him earlier was the real powerhouse of the duo. Since regular cleanup crews only dealt with trash monsters, they were often unprepared when facing people with spiritual energy. Then, the woman controlled the mud puppets to surround him, while the weasel-faced man blended in, waiting to strike from an angle. Just as Jianggu had figured out their attack patterns and countermeasures, the woman added a layer of mud beneath his feet to trap him. This way, Jianggu couldn't unleash a wide-range attack to clear the mud puppets. The woman thought her plan was foolproof. Jianggu would be helpless to retaliate. Once he was dealt with, the support team would be no match for them. Then, Jizu from the Celestial Realm would be theirs for the taking. You control mud with your abilities, right? But his spiritual energy was geared toward close combat, though his initial approach was flawed. His techniques were nothing more than basic boxing. It was just those odd sliding shoes that let him glide swiftly through the mud. In the end, it was just a simple trick. That's precisely why he became that woman's partner. After seeing through their tactics in the backlight, Jianggu chuckled softly. True, I lack experience in fighting others. But as long as I master my spiritual energy, I can become unstoppable. The next moment, he activated his spiritual energy, unleashing its power into the ground. The echo instantly helped him pinpoint the bald man's location. A lightning-fast strike ended the battle. Jianggu effortlessly took down the 2 scavengers in front of him. If not for the muddy old forest, he would have finished them even sooner. Jianggu effortlessly took down the 2 scavengers in front of him. It's because you were too slow that you fell in one move. You're not much better yourself. After stalling long enough, Guzite arrived at the exit with Zhuzhua. Confirming the escape route was safe, but unable to use spiritual energy here, he told his teammate to climb up and call for help. He planned to head back the way they came to check on Jianggu. Just then, unfamiliar footsteps echoed. Guzite assumed it was Jianggu catching up. He even greeted the person, asking if they were hurt, as the shadowy figure emerged from the darkness. It wasn't Jianggu, just another scavenger. He studied Zhuzua's face, noting his unusual eyes and the dark circles beneath them, then grinned in satisfaction. Ha! Just as we thought, you're our long-sought target. That's right. You're a cross-dimensional traveler. He gripped the wall, and to everyone's shock, suddenly unleashed his strength. In an instant, the escape door was reduced to rubble. Guzite suspected an ambush by their allies. He immediately shielded Zhuzhua, warning that resisting the cleanup crew would mean declaring war. The man looked strange but seemed formidable. Guzite demanded to know what happened to Jianggu. Ignoring everything, the man walked straight to Zhuzhua and said his leader had been waiting to meet him. As he spoke, he tried to drag Zhuzhua away, even ripping off his breathing mask. Zhuzhua felt uneasy, fearing something had happened to Jianggu. He was usually lenient toward those with some skill. Jianggu had been poisoned by him and was now paralyzed. But he wouldn't be in immediate danger. Then he summoned his spiritual energy, claws strapped to his hands. He didn't want to harm Zhuzhua if unnecessary, but Guzite and Fu Luo couldn't just stand by. Their attacks missed, and he held his own against both of them. Guzite had potential, but as a support, he wasn't worth the man's attention. Those without power shouldn't try to protect others. Zhuzhua hesitated, but Guzite told him to retreat first, saying he had something to tell him. He was dead. Zhuzhua stood frozen. Moments later, his killing intent pierced through Guzite's body. To him, these insects didn't deserve to exist. Seeing Guzite's protective charm fly off, Zhuzhua's mind went blank. In the blink of an eye, his thoughts flashed back to the day Zakito was killed. His foster father was stabbed right before his eyes, and he couldn't even move. That helplessness made him hate himself. With no friends to share the burden, he slammed his head against the wall in despair. Zakito saw him covered in blood and was heartbroken. Maybe it didn't hurt as much as it used to. I won't force you to talk to outsiders. So, I want to hear your true feelings, Zuzwa. But Zuzwa felt no emotional shift at all. Perhaps his heart was already empty. There was nothing to hold on to, and nothing left to lose. All he felt was a burning rage, though he couldn't say why. Abandoned by his own family, he believed he was worthless. Maybe that confusion had turned into anger. Not feeling his own worth was the root of his pain. After bandaging Zuzwa's wounds, Zakito decided to take him out to find something meaningful. The world is vast, there must be something you truly care about. Once you find what you love and want to do, your life will be filled with purpose. Then you won't feel so empty inside. But things weren't as simple as Zakito had hoped. Zuzwa's indifference worried him. If a young boy's behavior isn't corrected in time, he could easily go astray. But today was only the first day, maybe he'd change later. Just then, he saw someone from the heavenly realm tossing trash from above. Zuzwa rushed over like a madman, digging through the garbage. When he found a discarded mask, he burst into tears. Seeing him cry relieved Zakito a little. At least it proved Zuzo wasn't completely cold and heartless. This thing isn't completely broken. I think I can fix it. In that moment, Zuzo found a reason to keep living. It turned out he could see the true value in abandoned things. Back in the present, when Gazite's protective charm fell into Zuzo's hands, it instantly transformed. His once limited power now flowed effortlessly. Zuzwa's ability wasn't turning things into killing intent, it was amplifying their value to the extreme. Perhaps resonating with his current state of mind, the charm turned into a guardian-like force. The bandit was so intimidated by this overwhelming presence that he nearly drooled. Yet his eyes still burned with desire. Fuluwa carried Gazite away from the scene. Seeing his once kind companion now gravely injured, Zwa's fury reached its peak. Thanks to those words, he remembered the meaning of living. Perhaps now he finally understood what companionship truly meant. If he kept losing his temper like before, he wouldn't accomplish anything. But at this moment, his goal was clearer than ever. Next, I'm going to teach you a painful lesson. Seeing him trembling with rage, the man didn't seem to care at all. Yet facing off against a world crosser brimming with fighting spirit, he was so excited his mind was shaking. Then, he introduced himself as Chabwa. Before completing his mission to escort Zwa to meet the boss, he wanted to give this kid a good thrashing. To make him understand the vast difference between world crossers. Grinning with his gleaming white teeth, he declared the match officially on. Meanwhile, Fluo was desperately trying to stop Geet's bleeding, but the wounds were too severe, he might not last much longer. Despite that, his thoughts kept drifting to how Zwa was faring. Back when he was a trainee, his impatience and temper always held him back from showing his true strength. But now, Geet could sense a powerful aura radiating from him. On the other side, Chabwa found the fight increasingly odd, as Zwa hadn't moved an inch from the start. He wasn't even trying to fight back. Come on, show me what you've got. With a growl, Zwa slowly raised his arm as the monstrous figure closed in. With a deafening crash, Chabwa's attack missed entirely, leaving him stunned. How had Zwa dodged it? But the next second, as he closed in for melee combat, he sensed something was off. No matter which direction he attacked from, Zwa dodged as if he had predicted it. It was as if he was toying with him, something that had never happened before. Perhaps Gazite once prayed to this talisman, hoping everyone would return safely. And safety meant not suffering the slightest harm. Just needing to enhance evasion abilities. When he touched the talisman, a vision flashed in his mind. It seemed to be an ability to strengthen evasion. This was completely beyond Chabwa's understanding. However, it seemed Zwa had no way to counterattack. Neither side could land a hit on the other, making it sound like an unsolvable stalemate. But he didn't realize Zwa hadn't moved at all from the start. Meaning he wasn't deliberately dodging Chabwa's attacks. But rather, Chabwa simply couldn't touch him. Thanks to this talisman, he could effortlessly predict his opponent's attack directions. Suddenly, a faint red glow emanated from the aura, and the central eye began to spin. Chabwa felt his body freeze midair, his rhythm completely disrupted. This aura clearly wasn't meant for offense. But as long as Zwa could synergize with it, the two would become the ultimate defensive and offensive duo. Chabwa shot forward like a bullet, blood gushing from his nose. Yet he was oddly thrilled. It had been ages since he'd faced an opponent this unpredictable. Pinning him down with the aura before rushing in for a flurry of strikes seemed like the most boring tactic in the world, yet it worked surprisingly well. I'll fight you properly before dragging you back. You said it yourself, I'll keep going until you're completely down. Bastard. Chabwa realized that if he kept charging recklessly, he'd be the one taking the hits. So he asked Zwazu if he'd seen anyone throwing punches. Zwazu didn't think someone like him deserved any blame. Zwazu tried to ambush him, but his aura support seemed to have eyes in the back of its head. No matter how tricky the angle, Zwazu could react ahead of time. Strangely, after getting roughed up by this guy, Zwazu felt a rush of excitement. Zhuazu thought the guy was a freak. Just then, Zhuazu tossed a handful of gravel. Zhuazu sidestepped, expecting an attack, but his move was completely anticipated. No sooner had he steadied himself than Zhuazu was sent flying by a punch. He'd already figured out Zhuazu's attack patterns, yet still charged in recklessly. This left Zhuazu utterly baffled. Only after his final charge was intercepted, nearly knocking him out, did Chabo finally stop, leaning against the wall to catch his breath. Facing Zhuazu's mockery, he just laughed. It had been a long time since he'd been beaten so thoroughly. Seeing that twisted grin, Zhuazu felt sick. He wasn't one to enjoy taking hits, this was just the guy's personal quirk. In truth, he'd already spotted the weakness in Zhuazu's aura. It couldn't detect attacks without malicious intent. In other words, it only reacted after sensing intent to dodge. For example, when he threw rocks at Zhuazu earlier, the aura didn't react at all. Simply put, it didn't respond to unconscious objects. And Chabo's aura, or rather, the claws on his right hand, contained a potent neurotoxin. The next second, he drove his claws straight into his own body right in front of Zhuazu. Zhuazu, this way I'll lose consciousness. If my body moves while I'm unconscious, the human aura will assume my actions aren't intentional. A sense of dread welled up in Zuzu's heart. After pushing him to the brink, Zhuazu never expected Chabo's body would still lunge to kill instinctively after losing consciousness. With a piercing roar, Zhuazu immediately sensed something was wrong. Because the human aura behind him couldn't detect even a trace of killing intent from Chabo. Under these conditions, his attacks grew fiercer, his lethal moves relentless. One wrong move, and he'd be swept into a deadly vortex. So Zhuazu deliberately drew the attacks toward himself. But those attacks, devoid of intent, made things far harder for him. Even after dodging one wave, the next would come crashing down just as fiercely. Because he truly had been rendered unconscious by his own toxins. As a result, Zuzu's human aura became ineffective. Zhuazu never imagined he'd break through so quickly like this. What a complete madman. Zhuazu suddenly recalled a similar situation from the past, when he'd been pranked by a few troublemakers. On the way back, he had asked Zakito about the faint bloodstains, what they were. That was exactly how his foster father had answered when asked. The current scene was eerily similar, so he had some experience dealing with such anomalies. Facing this relentless assault, all he could do was keep dodging. Fortunately, Zhuazu's spiritual energy shielded him. But in the next instant, he charged into Zhuazu's restricted zone. At the last second, a staff flew in and intercepted Chabo. That was Zenka's spiritual energy. I should give him a good scolding. But seeing how isolated he was, Zhuazu couldn't help but worry about his condition. Still, seeing Zhuazu wield his spiritual energy so skillfully, Zenka felt reassured. The wild yet stylish gear was truly a sight to behold. Unfortunately, Chabo was now unconscious. So the power of spiritual energy had no effect. Zenka had actually arrived much earlier. After observing, he noticed Zhuazu's spiritual energy could sense intent. But their current situation was quite dire. Zhuazu's spiritual energy wasn't suited for attack, and Zenka's movements were hindered by poison. Fine, I'll test him with a light strike first. What are you talking about? Zhuazu vaguely sensed he was mixing personal feelings into the matter. Little did he expect Zenka planned to coordinate using Zhuazu's spiritual energy as a buffer to reposition, then striking from a distance with his own. This way, they could restrain him before his claws made contact. But if they guessed wrong, Zhuazu would end up taking a beating like a punching bag. Just as Chabo broke free, the two faced a new crisis. The man lunged forward and cleaved a stone pillar in two with a single slash. That thing was sharper than I imagined, and it silently poisoned me too. The paralyzing pain just now was unbearable. At this point, there's no other choice. Zhuazu swung his staff straight at Zhuazu's head, and this time, his spiritual energy finally reacted. Zhuazu immediately charged at Chabo with his body, but hesitated for a moment. Yet in the next instant, Zhuazu's staff still struck him squarely. Zhuazu's earlier strike was clearly aimed at Zhuazu's head, scaring him pale. In short, they found a viable way to deal with Chabo. With this, the two could fight freely, almost in perfect sync. Though it was their first time working together, their coordination was seamless, as if they'd practiced. Even though Chabo had lost consciousness, the sound of breaking bones was unmistakable. After the dust settled, he lay motionless on the ground. Zhuazu thought this move could also extend his attack range. But Zhuazu's control wasn't precise enough, he only gave a rough push. Zhuazu's mouth might be annoying, but in battle, his teamwork is surprisingly reliable. That's why Gue picked him to guide Zhuazu. From assessing the battle to adapting on the fly, Zhan Ka is one of the cleanup squad's top experts. Chabo was sent flying like a golf ball, followed by a relentless barrage of attacks. Before his feet even touched the ground, the cleanup squad punched through several layers of flooring. That hit was enough to jolt Chabo awake in agony. He stared at the furious kid in front of him, shocked at how far the poison had spread. Zhan Ka landed slowly, marking the start of a mid-battle break. Chabo lay motionless on the ground,
while Zanzika collapsed from exhaustion in place. Even breathing was agonizing now. Zhuo only relaxed when the fight paused. The red glow in his eyes faded, and the spiritual energy behind him dissipated. This was the first time he'd witnessed such a scene. But Gu Ziti's protective charm was still inside. If he damaged someone's valuable item, Zhuo would feel terrible. Zanzika had a general idea of his abilities, but this was the first time he'd seen disposable spiritual energy like this. Could there be a time limit? Then Zhuo suddenly felt unwell. At first, Zanzika thought he looked odd because he was upset. But when he struggled to his feet and checked Zhuo's waist wound, he realized Zhuo had been poisoned. Just then, Jabo stirred in the distance. After easing his pain slightly, he sprang up. This guy had gone too far earlier, though he didn't seem to know what happened. Looks like I'm pretty capable even when unconscious. Stay put, go take care of Zhuo. Zanzika forced himself up. Get out of here, now. Is this guy even human? That last hit should have broken a few ribs, but he's walking around like nothing happened. Jabo even wished his left claw could be that powerful. But this wasn't the kind of self-healing Zanzika had guessed. If used properly, it could suppress the pain. After taking a beating like that, recovery would take a while. But a physique like that isn't something you see every day. His body had grown accustomed to the poison in his right claw, so its effects would only last about 10 more minutes. Looks like Zanzika just needs to hold out for 30 minutes. Before leaving, Jabo landed one last hit on him. This way, taking Zhuo won't face any obstacles. If the original plan fails, I'll probably face severe punishment from the boss. No matter what, he must find a way to capture this spirit medium. Zanzika could only watch helplessly as his companion was dragged away. His body felt paralyzed right now. Retreat! But he underestimated Zanzika's willpower. Panting, he kept his eyes locked on the direction they fled. At this moment, Chabwa was tightly gripping Zhuo, fleeing at full speed. He suddenly remembered he had left 2 accomplices behind. But reinforcements from behind should handle the cleanup. Zhuo realized he was about to be taken away. Yet his body was too stiff to move. The thought of getting his companions hurt because of his incompetence made him despise this feeling even more. Just as Chabwa dragged him into an open area outside, the sight before him made him freeze. He remembered this used to be an indoor area. His gaze sharpened for a moment before a massive banyan tree suddenly swept him away. Looks like I'll have to force Jiang Gu out first. Seeing the cleanup squad ahead, Chabwa couldn't help but shudder. And Gue immediately thought of this building, it was deep enough to become a den for those scoundrels. Since Zhuo and the others were deep underground, they couldn't establish communication, making them fall into the trap so easily. This is exactly the kind of thuggish behavior they're known for. Fortunately, Mima came out first to call for backup. Otherwise, that pack of rats would have caused chaos across the whole street. But thinking of her teammates still inside, Mima couldn't help but worry they might be in danger. But Nguye assured her that their teammates weren't that fragile. Then he instructed her to lead the medical team inside for rescue. Chabwa still hadn't realized he had run into a formidable opponent. It seemed like a group of powerful individuals were looking down on us, as if we were trash. Nguye was speechless, he didn't expect Zuzu to have fought such a twisted person. Using this kind of method to educate teenagers doesn't feel right. But Zuzu appeared calmer than expected, so he temporarily relaxed. The scarred men and the burly man beside them, seeing him weakened, bluffed about avenging Zuzu. But Nguye still had many questions for him. Anyone who dares harm the cleanup squad shouldn't expect to leave here safely. It seemed that if he couldn't escape, he'd likely be locked up in prison, losing his freedom forever. Seeing the situation, Chabwa sobered up a little. To be honest, he was just following orders. No matter what, he had to take Zuzu away. If he returned empty-handed, the consequences would be worse than death. In the next instant, he fully activated his fate energy. But at that moment, 2 arms tightly grabbed him. Go back without completing the mission? No way. I was just getting started, but that girl was much calmer than him. With so many strong opponents here, staying would mean failure and certain doom. Seeing Chabwa still trying to resist, Kuni snapped, while the boss gave a kind smile. Hearing this, the guy who had been so aggressive just moments ago instantly paled in fear. The 2 of them held him tightly, keeping him from moving. In the end, Chabwa had no choice but to compromise. After all, the boss's orders had to be followed. So he politely apologized to Ague. At that moment, Ague and the others saw a well-like door appear behind the girl. Chabwa was forced to say goodbye to Zuzu, as this Heavenly Realm native had given him quite a hard time. But now he was poisoned and could barely speak. Unexpectedly, the next second, Zuzu gritted his teeth and forced himself to stand. Unbelievable, he had completely regained his senses through sheer willpower. Chabwa had never seen anything like it. Zuzu would never forgive him for what he did to Gazite.
If given the chance, he would make sure to pay him back with interest. This kind of resolve and willpower was exactly to his liking. Just as he was about to throw out some harsh words, he suddenly noticed the mark on Zuzu's glove.
Coincidentally, he had the same serial number. This thing was truly powerful.
What a coincidence! If the boss found out, he'd be thrilled. It seemed the other side had some incredible intel. And that girl's ability appeared to be something like spatial teleportation. Before leaving, Chabo's words left Zuzu deep in thought. He never expected the item Zakito had given him would be so formidable. In the end, the crisis was resolved without further incident. Zhangge was rescued from the tunnel, while Gazite lay on a stretcher, barely conscious.
Zuozhuo looked at his teammate, his heart aching. You accidentally damaged that extremely precious protective charm.
But Gazite was happy because his treasure had helped Zuozhuo when he needed it most. After returning to headquarters and cleaning up, Zuozhuo felt weighed down. Enqui went over to comfort him, saying that this time, Zuozhuo had truly made good use of human nature. And had been a great help. But he still had to witness Gazite in such pain with his own eyes. It was the same in the heavenly realm. He had once watched his foster father die right in front of him. The feeling of losing someone so important sometimes made Zuozhuo feel like he was falling apart. He had even considered giving up. Enqui said that as a supporter, Gazite must have already made the decision to risk his life to protect his teammates.
It wasn't because Zuozhuo was an immortal, it was because in his eyes, the teammates he cherished were worth protecting.
Enqui said he wanted to take him to see Gazite again. It would be better to clear things up face to face. Since Gazite was actually still alive and well, he strained to see clearly. Seeing the situation, he nearly rushed forward.
So that was it.
You thought Gazite was dead, that's why you were so heartbroken.
Stay kind. I see. Don't just assume someone is gone.
Jite hadn't expected him to misunderstand things so badly.
How would Zuozhuo know?
Of course he'd think he was dead. It turned out it was all thanks to the cleanup team's medics. The girl named ICG at the front was one of the few healers in the team. Though she was a bit shy, Gazite was extremely grateful to her for saving his life this time. Plus, Fluo played a huge role in the rescue mission. Zit told him to follow his own pace, whether he chose to live as a mortal or not. And he had also seen all of Zuzo's expressions. Not only did he corner a formidable enemy, but he also worked seamlessly with Zhang Gu. He didn't blame Zuzo for the amulet. It was great to see his belongings put to good use. As long as the item was used where it was meant to be, he had no regrets.
Zuzo was overjoyed and cried because Xit was still alive. He never expected the desert bandits to go to such extremes against them. And the desert bandits as well.
But this time, the cleanup squad wasn't unprepared. This was the interdimensional artifact the demolition expert had mentioned. It seems they were also investigating the heavenly realm, Big Brother. Zuzo never imagined that the first time he met his big brother, he'd be in such a situation.
The man's name was Korva.
He regretted not being able to meet him on the first day.
His polite demeanor made Zuzo a little nervous.
Especially since he had mentioned asking Zuzo to stay for updates, which was why he refused to leave. If that were the case, he wouldn't have kept you here.
But after a series of tests, Zuzo's performance impressed him. He quickly spotted the glow above. And his teammates even risked their lives to protect them.
This proved that his strength was being used for the right cause.
Korva didn't mind at all. He officially welcomed Zuzo to the cleanup squad.
He asked Zuzo to follow him back to his room. The uniform and documents were already prepared for him. The so-called interdimensional boundary was the dividing line between the heavenly realm and the mortal world. It was said that those who tried to return to the heavenly realm would perish while crossing it. In the Forbidden Zone, believed to be the closest to the boundary, lived a woman. Travelers who had accidentally entered the Forbidden Zone were saved by her. When asked why she was there, she replied that she was waiting to see people fall from above. What shocked them even more was her next statement. It turned out that some had traveled between the two realms without dying. Perhaps she had truly seen someone cross the boundary alive.
Thus, Zuzo saw hope in returning to the heavenly realm.
But the path there was fraught with danger.
Zuzo wasn't the type to back down from a challenge.
He immediately put on the official cleanup squad uniform,
marking his official entry into the group.
But he shocked everyone by wanting to go to the Forbidden Zone to meet the woman right away.
No one could stop him. Where did this kid get such determination?
If there's even a chance to find clues about returning to the heavenly realm, how could I just sit here?
Calm down, kid.
In the end, Ague still called him back. Since they were heading to such a dangerous place, they had to be fully prepared.
Their destination was the very center of the Forbidden Zone. Going in alone without any intel would be suicide. So they needed to test his current strength first. Zuozhuo was taken aback by this.
Because he truly didn't know his own limits or weaknesses.
And that was crucial information for his teammates. It turned out everyone would be entering the Forbidden Zone's center together. At first, Zuzwa thought it was unnecessary. After all, Igwe had gone alone last time. Actually, the cleanup squad regularly entered the Forbidden Zone to gather intel on monsters. This time, though, they had to be wary of desert bandits. Zuzwa was confused. How could those troublemakers become realm walkers too? But not everyone was good, and not everyone valued things properly. Even villains had things they cherished. It was just that some people disliked realm walkers, calling them greed-obsessed. But sometimes, being too fixated on something really does make people dislike you. Earlier, Zuzwa had rashly taught a lesson to someone who didn't value things properly. But evil is evil, some people just need to be dealt with. Ngue said he could take a break today since he'd been running around all day. But Zuzwa seemed to have no idea what resting even meant. You don't even sleep peacefully, and now you're itching to go to the arena? He was just a step away from the door, but Liyue had already stolen his attention. She wanted to take Zuzu on a tour of the cleanup squad's building as a way to pass the time. Zuzu hadn't had a chance to explore properly before. Though it looked a bit old, the facilities were incredibly well equipped. Zuzu was seeing so many new things for the first time, and Liyue asked about life in the heavenly realm. Turns out the heavenly realm had all kinds of terrible people too. Liyue said the lower realm was the same. She was curious if Zuzu had ever eaten delicacies before, but all he'd had were soup and flatbread. What about sweets? Aren't sweets something only the rich can afford? Zuzu's eyes lit up instantly. Because the lower realm had shops specializing in sweets, and the cleanup squad even ordered from them regularly. Zuzu thought this place was paradise. Ague said the food here was more addictive than anything else. Zuzu's eyes were full of longing. He never expected the mortal realm to have top-tier chefs, maybe even better than the heavenly realm. With a word from Weiwei, Zuzu didn't hesitate to stuff his mouth. The first bite seemed to unleash his inner glutton. Zuzu couldn't stop, it was even more delicious than he imagined. Ague joked that he was definitely going to get addicted. After all, this is Zuzu's first time eating proper food. He might even get chubby because of it. Just then, a guy with a middle-part hairstyle appeared and walked straight up to him. Zuzu stared blankly as the guy sucked on a pacifier. Was he here to eat too? Though he still wanted more, sharing was what teammates did. After muttering to himself, Zuzu handed him a lollipop. Once he finished eating, he reached out to Zuzu again. What's this kid's deal? You have no right to say that. This could get serious. The food storage was completely raided, and Zuzu passed by curiously, wondering what he was up to now. But the next second, the sight in front of Zuzu made him jump. He thought an alien had invaded. Only when Zuzu revealed his true form did he realize the silly kid had just eaten until he was round. The next day at the training grounds, Zuzu felt nervous under his teammates' stares. The problem was, he was holding a knife but couldn't sense any changes. Had his ability failed again? Maybe he was so obsessed with food he'd forgotten how to use spiritual energy. But that didn't make sense. It looked like the official ability test was turning into Zuzu's weight loss challenge. At least he could move normally now, though Zuzu was still confused. He remembered exactly how it felt to use his ability, yet the knife showed no reaction. Zuzu used to be able to fix even discarded items. If this was the foundation of his ability, maybe he could only react to broken objects. Zenka's words hit him like a wake-up call. So they took him to the junkyard to pick something he liked. Zuzu picked up a tattered back scratcher. It seems Zenka's guess was right. No wonder Nkue recommended this coach. You almost couldn't hold back your amused expression. Sometimes, ordinary people can see themselves more clearly than geniuses. Zuzwa thanked him. Zenka reminded him in response. They asked you to try continuously transforming objects into human tools. Zuzwa suddenly noticed something was off. But after using it just 3 times, he suddenly started bleeding from the nose without warning. Nkue remembered last time was the same. When the user's stamina was too weak, their body couldn't keep up. Zuzwa was flustered by this. Nkue said the longer a treasure is preserved, the more likely it is to become a high-quality human tool. Saying Mona was of excellent quality meant it could unleash greater power. But the outcome wasn't determined by the human tool's quality alone. Though Zuzwa had cherished these gloves since childhood, it was odd to call them low quality. But it shouldn't have put such a heavy strain on his body. Janga suspected it might be related to the chain reaction from turning into a bear. At that moment, Zuzwa still didn't understand why the weapon he transformed had shattered in the end. Now, it looked perfectly fine. Moreover, even when creating a new weapon, the old one remained intact. Maybe there was a time limit, or perhaps it was because he no longer regretted it? Because your ability is to maximize the value of abandoned or damaged items. If it shattered because Zuzwa used it again and fulfilled its purpose, then what just happened makes sense. The moment Zuzwa set it down, it suddenly shed the dirt on its own. It seemed Liyue's guess wasn't baseless after all. In other words, Zuzwa didn't break them, they had completed their final mission on their own. Zuzwa suddenly felt a sense of relief, his ability wasn't destroying everything around him. But what type was that desert bandit's glove? Were there other similar items? Then, Liu suddenly asked Zuzwa if he had named the gloves yet. He had never considered that before. Ankue said he needed to come up with a good name. Meanwhile, Laba was taken back to the desert bandit gang's headquarters. Unexpectedly, the man known as the boss possessed a human tool like Zuzwa's, and he seemed very interested in Zuzwa. The mysterious glove sent a sharp pain through his palm, making him wince. When he wiped his hand and glove and returned to the room, something felt off. Only when he looked up did he realize he had stayed up too late. Zuzwa lay lazily on the bed in thin pajamas and shorts. It's already 4 in the morning. You should sleep. You have to head to the Forbidden Zone early tomorrow. Zuzwa was stunned for a few seconds. He hadn't expected his room to be on the first floor, making it easy for her to climb through the window at night. This time, she came because she heard Zuzwa groaning in pain from his hand. She hadn't expected the sight under the glove to be so unsettling. But as long as he wore the glove, the pain wasn't as bad. You just need to clean the glove regularly to be safe, though it's not as severe as a burn. Only your parents might know about this, but what they left behind has both good and bad sides. It all depends on how Zuzwa chooses. Therefore, preparing the necessary things is essential. Speaking of preparation, a gas mask is a must. Just like when Zuzwa nearly suffocated after falling from the heavenly realm. Ankue put a simple mask on him. It's just that the cleanup crew has their own specialized gear. All of these are crafted by a professional artisan from the manufacturing department at headquarters. If he's not in the mood, he won't make anything decent. So we just have to go along with his pace. Earlier, Brother Jiang rushed him, and the master got furious. For now, Big Brother wants you to handle another preparation task. That is, to find a curse-addicted sorcerer. Because no one knows what might happen in the Forbidden Zone. A few unlucky souls were torn apart by monsters the moment they stepped in. So sometimes, an extra layer of protection is a good idea. They plan to find a spirit medium to perform a ritual for Zuzwa. More precisely, to obtain a protective charm. This was the first time Zuzwa had heard of such a thing. That painter is something of a genius in his own way. He occasionally comes to the cleanup crew headquarters to paint. But we haven't seen him lately. If he were here, we wouldn't have to go so far. This time, Zuzwa's destination is Cebu Town, the city of paintings. The team accompanying Zuzwa to search for the woman in the Forbidden Zone has been selected. There are familiar faces like Zhang Ku and Shizu, as well as a member from the Zex squad of the cleanup crew. For support, missions usually have a 5-person team. But since this is the Forbidden Zone, only 3 were sent. However, this burly man named Delman suddenly started yelling at Zuzwa, giving him a fright. He said he'd heard about Zuzwa's past and felt sorry for him. And what he hates most is teammates turning on each other. Come on, Delman. Zuzwa was brought back by Nkue, meaning he's part of the Akuta faction. It seems this friend named Tansy is a reasonable person. But the Zex squad members are clearly a bloodthirsty bunch. Seeing this, Nkue suggested letting the hot-headed Delman shout a slogan before departure. Brother Jiang knew what was coming and made a quick exit. This muscle-bound guy's loud voice reminded people of a certain pirate anime character who loves shouting and claims she'll become the queen. Of course, there were also those who joined in the ruckus. Only Zuzwa nearly had a heart attack from the scare. But it seemed a bit rude not to join in. If you can't beat them, you might as well join them. Soon, the group quickly headed toward Cebu Town. No matter where you go here, you can see villagers doing graffiti. Ankue and the others' destination was the central area of this place. Zuzwa never expected someone to build an entire town inside a sinkhole. Sansi explained that basically, all major cities have domes. This is to prevent celestial trash from falling and hitting people. Those who live outdoors will eventually be crushed by falling debris. People who tolerate this habit are truly awful. At that moment, 2 people tried to enter the city but seemed to hit an invisible wall at the gate. The gate was clearly open, yet they couldn't get in, as if blocked by an invisible barrier. However, when Zuzwa and his group approached the gate, they walked in effortlessly. It seemed they didn't encounter the same issue. The 2 guys thought they were hallucinating. This was Zuzwa's first time experiencing something like this. But Igue told him to just walk in directly. Because as long as you have no ill intent, you can freely enter and exit the city. Graffiti was everywhere on the walls, looking quite impressive. The atmosphere in the lower realm was indeed very free. However, many people couldn't tolerate this form of art. That's why they built a city where everyone could freely create graffiti. Even Jianggu was utterly amazed. Every time he came here, new artwork would appear. But this time, they weren't here to admire the art. Ague wanted to take him to meet a dimensional artist. That artist's ability was to hide talismans within objects in his paintings. like the talisman hidden on this wall.
Its effect was to nullify one attack. Just like the two guys who were blocked at the gate earlier.
It was because the dimensional artist had painted a picture outside the city and hidden a talisman in it.
A wish that kept those with malicious intent from entering. It was obvious they were here to cause trouble. He never expected the crowd to be so diverse. This artist was considered an extremely rare dimensional traveler, because his popularity wasn't innate but passed down through generations.
Meanwhile, Igwe was walking down the street.
Unexpectedly, he bumped into a child, making him cry.
Did he hit him that hard?
Someone shouted that Igwe had made the child cry.
Igwe made the child cry. Just as everyone was feeling awkward, a man in a trench coat suddenly appeared at the corner. He was the mayor of Cebu Town.
I thought you'd be at home as usual.
We're here to ask Gupu to help hide a talisman. Where is he today?
The mayor looked troubled. Because a dimensional artist named Gupu had passed away that morning.
The news left everyone feeling heavy-hearted.
Igwe never expected to end up in such a situation.
Because Gupu wasn't content with just painting in the safe zone. So he often ventured into the contaminated area.
He must have been so absorbed in his work that he even took off his mask.
The mayor was deeply saddened as well. Though Zuzua and Gupu had only met once, he could tell he was a very passionate person.
And someone who would stick to doing what he loved. The mayor felt terribly sorry that they had to face this so soon after arriving. At that moment, Zuzua thought of those people in the heavenly realm who littered carelessly. They had indirectly caused Gupu's death.
Sansi told him not to take all the blame on himself.
Then the mayor announced that the successor of the popularity inheritor had been decided. It was the little girl and Igwe from this morning.
The successor had to be chosen personally by the predecessor.
Though no one knew what the criteria were. Since Gupu had already acknowledged her. It was believed the brush would accept her as well. Then she would need to awaken as a cross-dimensional person. And become a talisman artist to continue this work. Chanling clearly hadn't moved past the pain of losing her master. But as a painter, inheriting this brush was the highest honor. She was still too young though, and needed time to hone her skills.
A talisman artist was like the face of this city.
It was hard to imagine the immense pressure on such a young girl's shoulders. Looking at her, it was like seeing herself from years ago. Fuluwa just felt a pang of frustration.
He never expected someone could become a cross-dimensional person just by talent alone.
While he had to work step by step, cherishing every item to earn it. This made him overthink things a little. But since this was his path, he had to keep going. As Jianggu would say, effort was part of talent too. Before even discussing skill, inheriting popularity itself was an extremely rare thing.
Duo was also curious, what kind of style did her art belong to? The mayor knew Nguye was in a hurry. But for now, they could only wait a few more days.
After all, they were already so familiar with each other, so waiting until the town finished handling Gupu's affairs made sense.
Gemlin relied heavily on Gupu, clearly seeing him as an older brother.
It was sudden, just moments ago, Gupu had been so happy while painting. Though only entrusted with a task, he had genuinely pursued his own romance.
Though the mayor couldn't paint, he could see the passion in those artworks.
That was why he bore the weight of being mayor.
Igwe also remembered how Gupu would sometimes go to headquarters to paint without notice.
Just doing something out of pure love, that passion could never be replicated.
Guye just felt a heaviness in his heart.
It seems they can only take their leave for now.
Watching Jaemulin hiding in the corner, Guye hoped she would recover from this blow soon.
They had planned to return another time, but in the next moment, the seemingly fragile girl was no longer sorrowful. The girl suddenly snatched the brush from the mayor's hand and ran out, leaving everyone in the room staring at each other in shock. They hurried after her and found the girl had already taken out several bottles of paint.
Jaemulin had come to terms with it.
Though her foster father's passing had deeply saddened her, no matter how much everyone wept, he wouldn't have been happy underground. So she had to pull herself together.
In an instant, the brush transformed, radiating a dazzling golden light. Jaemulin immediately began creating with it. The moment the brush touched the paint bottles, they burst into brilliant fireworks. In a flash, the gloom over the entire city vanished.
And this was the inheritor of her foster father's legacy. It was as if she could see her foster father's figure from the past. The fireworks ignited a flame of passion in everyone's hearts. If they stopped painting, her foster father, as their guardian, would surely be disappointed. So instead of grieving, they should celebrate his passing with a grand festival. I see this is Cebu Town, a place full of joy and freedom. Never would I have guessed the inheritor of her foster father's legacy was such an unassuming little girl. Though I don't recall agreeing to let her draw that strange art on me. Dui was hopping mad, while Jaemulin just stood in front of him, grinning foolishly.
Her tiny fangs were just too adorable.
It seems senior brother Guay has somewhat understood what kind of person becomes a spellcaster. This girl truly resembles the inheritor of her foster father's legacy.
Jianulin is the 6th generation heir of the brush spirit tool. Previous generations recorded information in books, so there aren't many written records left behind.
Since she had only recently become a realm walker, Jianulin realized that whether drawing directly on people or on the city, permission was usually required.
This trait is just like her foster father's. It seems each generation of spellcasters inherits some of their predecessors' abilities.
Thus, the abilities of each generation of spellcasters are nearly identical,
with only minor differences in the details.
The usage and effects of the item vary depending on the user, as do its form and abilities. Yet the fact that such abilities can be passed down through generations proves the spirit tool is extraordinary. Because their inspiration while painting is so rich, their abilities end up astonishingly similar.
They use flower bouquets to represent events, incorporating different metaphors into their painting process. This free-spirited style of painting might just be the standard for choosing the successor of the popularity artifact. Gemlin really likes people like this.
In the future, she will use this standard to choose her successor. Enki doesn't understand her criteria, but true artists are probably people like them. Unexpectedly, the usually cautious Enki was tricked by this little girl.
However, he brought Zuzu here hoping Gemlin could cast a spell for him.
A divine incantation that could lessen the effects of a severe injury.
Since she likes Zuzu too, the next moment, the popularity artifact in her hands glowed golden and transformed into a tattoo pen.
This shocked Enki and the mayor, as it was their first time seeing the popularity artifact change form. It could not only cast spells but also turn into her favorite painting tool. Gemlin's potential far exceeded their expectations.
Gemlin was a little upset because she could only use an ordinary brush. If it got wet, it would wash away.
I'll draw on you to cast the spell.
This guy hasn't learned his lesson at all.
Soon, everyone was marked with the divine incantation to lessen severe injuries.
But even someone as lively as Gemlin felt exhausted after casting the spell on 9 people. Seeing Gemlin holding the popularity pen, others asked the mayor if he had made a mistake. Why let a nobody inherit this brush?
The man started boasting about his achievements over the years, but it was clear he was unworthy of stepping through the door. Every day, he pretends to be an artist for personal gain, forgetting his true purpose. The mayor suddenly flew into a rage and told them to get lost.
If you heard me, then disappear.
Ague didn't expect the mayor to have such a fiery temper and reminded him to watch his blood pressure.
Gemlin waved goodbye to everyone. This was Zuzu's first time meeting interesting people outside the cleaning crew. Meanwhile, Zuzu's mask was ready.
Before returning to cleaning headquarters, Ague decided to take him to do something he'd enjoy. Seeing the mountain-high pile of trash in front of him, Zuzu froze.
Ague just wanted to be safe and let him pick something he liked to take with him. But before he could finish speaking, Zuzu dove wildly into the trash heap.
Unexpectedly, the TV on top suddenly turned on, and the man on the screen was the leader of the robbery gang. Regarding Zuzu's mask, the creator said it was his most satisfying work.
Zuzu was startled. It was August, the equipment maker for the cleaning crew. It seemed Zuzu's full coverage mask was finished. Yes, it was done. Zuzu didn't even know August had secretly taken his measurements while he slept. And based on Ague and Jianke's personalities,
he designed an ultra-cool look for him.
Shirzang didn't notice someone had entered his room in the middle of the night.
This guy is a total creep, he didn't even knock. I never expected people from the heavenly realm to have the habit of not locking their doors when they sleep. And Shirzang barely sleeps an hour a day. How did this guy even find the chance? Even more ridiculous is that a guy with nerves of steel like this is Asia's older brother. I never imagined the lower realm had so many loudmouths. Just as they were about to set off, Nkue suddenly told him to take off his bracelet. Then, everyone bit their fingers and pressed their blood onto the bracelet. Turns out the bracelet works like a phone. Only those who've exchanged blood can contact each other.
I didn't know the bracelet had this kind of function.
Exchanging blood sounds like something only close friends would do.
You can contact me anytime. Shirzang, what's the principle behind this?
It's probably a power of the realm crossers. Then you'll have to exchange blood with us too.
Shirzang broke out in a cold sweat.
After some struggle, they finally set off for the Forbidden Zone to find the woman.
But Ague grumbled that Shirzang brought too much junk, since they'd have to walk anyway. By the way, this is Shirzang's second time coming to the Forbidden Zone.
The danger level there goes without saying.
And this is the Desert Forbidden Zone, designated as Area 5.
What they were stepping on wasn't sand but fossil-like debris. In the distance, everything was shrouded in a suffocating red haze. Far off, monsters kicked up clouds of red dust. According to the records, they'd have to go deeper to reach the woman.
You'd better keep up, Shirzang.
Of course, take it down with those gloves.
3, 2, 1. Everyone was itching to move.
Shirzang was the first to leap down the slope. His coat fluttered in the wind.
Now that he had a full coverage mask, Shirzang felt a lot more confident. But little did he know, all his movements in the desert forbidden zone were being watched by a group of bandits. Meanwhile, Zubo was sent on another mission by the bandit leader. At that moment, the cleanup squad encountered a monster. Shirzang recorded the battle and the monster's species from high ground. This would help with their work later. These grasshopper-like monsters had horn-like and stinger-like attack organs. Suddenly, a massive tail swept toward them. Shirzang immediately stepped onto a pair of scissors, leapt into the air, and after charging up, split the monster in half with a single vertical slash. No, I didn't throw it. If Shirzang's ability is violent aesthetics, then Shirzang himself is pure aesthetics. He kept dodging the monster's attacks before seizing the chance to step forward and clamp its head with a popular prop. In the next second, 4 double-edged blades pierced through the monster's skull. The strike was clean and powerful, but being stared at by so many grotesque things was still unsettling. Just as Zuozwa was about to unleash his ultimate move to clear the battlefield, Nkue suddenly dive-bombed from above. He unleashed a wide-area attack, slicing the monsters into pieces, while searing them crispy on the outside and tender inside with a high-voltage current. However, there seemed to be one left perfect for Zuozwa to handle. After dodging the monster's attack, he pulled out a keyboard. As he activated an ability from the distant ruins, a woman suddenly sensed something and looked outward. It seemed she had sensed Zuozwa's power. At that moment, the keyboard in his hands began to transform. He casually pressed a key, and in the next second, the keys shot out like rockets, jerk. And they just happened to form the word jerk. What a convenient ability, though it burns through disposable props even faster. He hadn't expected such a warm welcome upon arriving at the restricted zone. But if the monsters were burrowing up from underground, that meant there was a lot of trash buried down there. Meanwhile, Fuluwa, who had been busy taking notes, nearly got taken out by a monster, which naturally drew complaints from Guzi. But protecting non-combatants in the restricted zone was also their responsibility. This was Zuozwa's first team mission, and he kept getting his mask dirty from the sandstorm. As he wiped his mask clean, he suddenly spotted a figure darting in the distance. Then, Deolman suddenly spoke up, startling him. Sansi said the sandstorm was too heavy, and they almost lost track of Zuozwa, but it seems he handled himself well. Seeing them protect him, Zuozwa thought this time he finally proved useful. Zuozwa followed their gaze and realized the dark shadow from earlier wasn't an illusion. A woman with a slender figure stood there. "You're here looking for Amo, right?" The voice was breathless, as he hadn't noticed anyone approaching. Even with limited visibility, he should have sensed someone's presence. Yet she seemed to have been there all along. Stranger still, she wasn't taking any precautions despite being in the restricted zone. Maybe she's the woman the cleanup team is searching for, but that would be too much of a coincidence. However, she didn't seem hostile. Zuozwa, seeing Nkue hadn't decided yet, directly asked if she'd seen anyone who could travel between the heavenly realm and the mortal realm. The important part was that the woman honestly answered, yes. Nkue was speechless, but since they'd found her, the stench here was unbearable. It's bad for the lungs. How about we talk at Amo's place instead? We won't need masks there. It seemed her home was nearby, Nkue thought. After a moment, he decided to follow her and see what happened. Even if she had ulterior motives, it was best to resolve things through conversation. If it came to a fight, Nkue wouldn't hold back. Though, he might go a little easier on her. However, as soon as they arrived at Amo's home, something unexpected happened. The strongest, Nkue, suddenly collapsed, foaming at the mouth. Dudo could hardly believe his eyes as the girl named Anmo suddenly gave a sinister smile. The scene rewound to an hour earlier, when the group was trailing the girl from a distance, as the area ahead was the deepest part of the restricted zone, and they remained on high alert. Before long, a towering structure loomed before them, like a lighthouse. The surroundings were filled with incredibly hard boulders and a stone pillar growing from a crack. As they approached, they found the interior space was larger than expected. In such a ruined world, having a house like this felt like a private villa to Nkue. Dudo, however, wondered if such a tall building could help him return to the heavenly realm. Just then, the girl pushed open the door and warmly invited them inside. But upon stepping in, the stone walls looked extremely ancient. A door directly opposite the entrance was tightly chained shut. Everyone found it suspicious. But they still followed the girl up the stairs. The air here was unpolluted, so the cleanup team members could remove their masks. Anmo immediately showed a joyful expression. She sat down at a stone table not far away. There was a large hole in the floor of the room. At this moment, they were on the highest floor of the building. Dudo noticed a corner piled with books and plush toys, items not easily found in restricted areas. Then, Anmo pressed her legs together and asked everyone what questions they had for her. Dudo cut straight to the point, asking if she had ever seen anyone traveling between the heavenly realm and the mortal world. Unexpectedly, the girl let out an adorable giggle before asking what kind of ideal partner they preferred. Next, and Mo's smile turned eerily sinister. She liked people with strong sense. Even more than their appearance. Among those present, the tall guy was exactly her type. Watching the girl's unsettling smile, Nkue had no idea what she meant. But he sensed a hint of unease in her expression. Then, they could collaborate with an MO. Little did he know, his words were like a barrel of gunpowder, setting her off. Her expression and tone turned sharply bitter. Her smile twisting into a snarling challenge. So Zwizwa and the others had come here to use her. Seeing the girl's furious reaction, Nkue held his breath and changed tactics. He bluntly said everyone was interested in her. Instead, he was met with an even louder outburst from her. She kept accusing Nkue of looking down on her and warned that her unintentional outfit had left everyone stunned. But Nkue had no patience for such a shallow girl and asked if she could stop wearing clothes that were hard to look at. His words infuriated her again. People who criticize a girl's outfit are the worst once those words are spoken. There's not even a chance to be friends. Then, Zwizwa suddenly noticed a pattern on the girl's boots, a large circle bound by a belt, with 3 smaller circles inside. Wasn't that the exact same symbol on his glove? This girl was far more than she appeared. Perhaps she played a crucial role in his return to the heavenly realm. The next second, his gaze turned sharp and icy. But before Zwizwa could act, Amo's clear, melodic voice filled the room. While Nkue was still confused, Duman, with his sturdy build, had silently appeared behind him at some point. A loud crash echoed as a powerful force knocked Nkue unconscious, foam spilling from his mouth. His consciousness fading as he collapsed motionless to the ground. Everyone was too stunned to react to the sudden attack. Duman, who seemed honest and simple, had suddenly turned on Nkue. His expressionless face made Zwizwa certain Amo was behind this. The symbol on her boots clearly belonged to the same lineage as his. Yet Amo kept repeating her earlier words. As if she was only interested in love-related topics. Zwizwa and the others' silence annoyed her, as conversation was the foundation of human interaction. If she kept talking alone, how could they ever grow closer? To Amo, humans were creatures who loved to express themselves. Thus, listening to guests pour out their hearts is Amo's way of welcoming them. But for those who bore her, Amo shows no mercy. Zwizwa felt helpless about this girl, as she had no interest in talking to them. Her eerie smile was like that of a demon from hell. Finally, Genka stepped forward. His tone was harsh, bluntly stating he had no time to play childish games with an ugly fool. He didn't care about the heavenly realm. If she dared to lay a hand on Nkue, she was an enemy. So now, he would show no mercy in taking her life. Suddenly, Amo flinched as if startled, even shedding tears. She looked utterly distressed. The next moment, Genka turned around as if sensing something. Sure enough, Delman had struck their companion again. It seemed he had been manipulated by the girl's ability. Yet, he still retained his own consciousness. The voice vowing to protect Amo was his sense of justice. As his teammate, Tamsi immediately recognized those were his true feelings. And his movements weren't stiff at all. Then, Amo pressed close to Delman's arm, smiling. This burly man had always been her fan. Her expression grew increasingly unhinged, her tone venomous. Saying Delman would betray his teammates without hesitation to protect her. Was Delman really a sleeper agent she had cultivated? Even the cleanup team found it hard to believe. Then, Delman pulled out the water pipe he had used to knock out Enkuer, his signature prop. A device called the Great Demon's Torment Fong, a water spraying tool. They had only come to gather intel, never expecting things to escalate like this. Why does it always end in a fight? This is my fault too. In the heat of the moment, Zwizwa heard another ill-timed voice. It was the disdain of someone from the heavenly realm. Zwizwa hadn't expected to encounter such shallow people again. Amo said there was another one of her fans among them. She just wanted to chat happily with everyone. If even this small wish couldn't be granted, maybe her fans would attack them the next second. And now, Zwizwa was her second fan, fearing domination by the heavenly realm's followers. In the world of consciousness, he had been captured by the followers. Unexpectedly, in reality, Sansi was pulling him aside to dodge the water jets. Delman's signature prop struck the wall with a deafening crash. Sansi explained the prop's popularity to Zhang Xia. It originated from his childhood wish for trees to grow faster. If hit by the water sprayed from this prop, it will swell like a balloon and eventually burst. However, Diao Meng changed the way the popularity prop is used. That sneak attack on Nkue earlier might have involved swapping the nozzle and adding a silencer. At this, Sansi became furious. After all, Diao Meng had never used the popularity prop on humans before. But Dilla knew their top priority was to stop Diao Meng. At that moment, Zhang Xia told her not to act rashly. If they didn't coordinate well, they might get hit and knocked out. Then, Dilu remembered what that girl had said earlier. One of them was her fan. Seeing Jiang Xia stop her, Dilu's eyes suddenly turned icy. After all, this wasn't the time to trust others. Dilu looked ahead as a massive water gun fired, blasting a hole in Amo's wall. Fortunately, Dilu dodged in time. Otherwise, she would have been shattered into pieces. That girl, Dilu, began taunting them, unsure who the real ally was. This kind of trust crisis is truly deadly. She said if everyone could just chat happily with her, they'd all live happily ever after. Suddenly, her eyes turned heart-shaped. Sansi angrily called her a lunatic. He shouted, "Lulu," trying to regroup with his teammate. To his shock, he saw Lulu's fierce gaze locked onto him. In his eyes, Sansi had transformed into a porcelain figure. But clearly, he was still in the human world. This cognitive dissonance made Lulu think he had returned to the heavenly realm. Django stared at him in disbelief. But soon, he realized something was wrong. A strange, sweet scent seemed to be spreading through the air. Everyone wondered how to create memories. In Lulu's eyes, Amo had transformed into Jihua. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, the girl Lulu both loved and resented. She told him she wanted to experience the feeling of being in love with him. Watching Jihua hug the stuffed toy he gave her tightly, reluctant to let go, saying she was happy and would cherish it. Lulu was immediately drawn in. Years ago, he had seen Jihua throw away that toy right in front of him. Now, Sansi wore a grave expression, shocked that Lulu was the next to fall. He didn't feel this was betrayal. Amo must have read their memories, making them see certain things. This annoyed Amo, who dared to say her ability was nothing special. She simply kept releasing a pleasant fragrance, recreating happy moments with loved ones. Her scent could make people fall in love again. It was all thanks to her that everyone protected her so fiercely. But revealing so much information didn't seem wise. Jianggu quickly devised a way to break the spell. No wonder she had everyone remove their masks earlier. So long as they couldn't smell the fragrance on her, they wouldn't mistake her for their beloved. Sansi spoke frankly, even by the side of a loved one, not all memories are happy ones. What would happen if hatred were poured onto someone you love? Amo watched them draw near, growing annoyed. Are you all out of your minds? Damn it, Amo had already warned them, but Zhuozhuo was still lost in his illusion. He had been betrayed by Jihua, yet now he was overjoyed just to see her. This way, his revenge would mean nothing. In the illusion, Jihua seemed about to be taken away by an evil creature. Hearing her cries for help, Zhuozhuo's emotions overwhelmed his reason, and he charged forward. In reality, he ended up standing against his teammates, his heart filled with pain. Meanwhile, Zuzu and Fluo were also affected by the fragrance, becoming Amo's puppets. Sansi hadn't expected so many to be bewitched. Though he didn't want to use his popularity item on teammates, there was no other choice. In Derman's already faded memories, the figure of a girl suddenly appeared. She thanked Derman for planting beautiful flowers for her. Seeing the girl's satisfied expression, Derman vowed to fill her room with flowers. Little did he know, the person he cherished was actually Amo in disguise. The top strategies of the cleanup team were all under her control. But once the trick behind her bindings was understood, there was nothing to fear. Sansi slowly took out his spiritual tool, the human target. Strange-looking ropes began to appear in his hands, coil after coil. Next, the ropes danced through the air, tightly binding them all. Amo was startled, this guy had ruined her whole plan. They weren't Amo's fans. Then, help her figure out how to see through that witch's movements. Sansi advised her to conserve her strength, as struggling would only tighten the bindings. At first, he tried using pain to snap them back to their senses, but he was mocked as a madman for daring to experiment by harming teammates. For Amo's sake, no matter how badly they were hurt, they would fight with all their strength. They would bleed. Sansi often said his spiritual tool was for ropes, its original purpose was to craft all kinds of bindings. With a swift hand chop, a massive rope appeared before everyone's eyes. On the side, he also casually grabbed the hysterical girl. Seeing Amo finally quiet down, Sansi let out a small sigh of relief. He demanded that Amo restore her companions to normal. Jianka was at a loss for words. This time, he couldn't help at all. However, seeing they still had 2 people left would double the pressure on their opponent. Not to mention, his harsh words carried quite a sting. Since Gue was still unconscious, they needed to call the medical team immediately. Meanwhile, Amo wouldn't stop crying. She was bound by Sansi in a strange position, her limbs aching terribly. It had been a long time since she'd been treated so roughly. Amo cursed him for being a heartless bastard. Next, she cried out for help. 4 people under that control were summoned by something. Especially Delman, the ropes binding him were so tight he couldn't help but scream in pain. The deeper they fell into the illusion, the more real it became. I won't spare a single one of you. I'll kill you all. Seems like you enjoy this kind of thing, huh? The ropes spun at high speed before plunging straight into the ground, reaching the lowest level of the building.
In the dark, sunless environment, Zenka looked at his scattered companions and said Sansi had gone too far this time.
Everyone was dizzy from being spun around. But at least the world had finally quieted down a bit. Though the method was rough, Zenka understood it was the most effective way.
Amo sneered that this was the price for refusing to talk to her properly.
Ending up turning on each other in the end. Humanity's dark nature couldn't hide in front of her.
Zenka was furious and wanted to teach her a lesson for what she'd just done.
Did you forget?
Before we left, Zemlin drew a magical talisman for us that could block a serious injury once.
With Sansi looking so foolish, everyone should be fine. Maybe dying once would even break the control. Even Gue was just pretending to be unconscious because he didn't know what this girl was capable of.
Next, he simply took off Amo's shoes because they looked like her spiritual artifact. Meanwhile, back at headquarters cleaning up the scene, the boss looked dazed as he placed a lollipop in front of her. He knew she had always been interested in Zuzu's potential, but what she should really focus on was what was hidden in his heart. She never expected the boss to know about this. She wondered what she had seen the first time she met Zuzu. It seemed Zuzu's secret wasn't just about a special spiritual artifact. Meanwhile, after Ague took off one of her shoes, Amo didn't dare to act recklessly. But once she regained her senses, she immediately lunged forward to get her shoe back. Judging by her furious expression, the shoe seemed incredibly important to her.
Don't touch that shoe, the scent on it will disappear. Ague quickly leaned in to sniff the girl's scent.
The smell was unbelievable.
Amo called him a pervert. Two Sanses stood by, watching as Ague woke up.
Truth was, they had no idea when he had regained consciousness. Logically, after such a heavy hit, his insides should have been shattered.
Who knew the spell could even heal that kind of injury?
And even unscathed, he still patiently lay on the ground, waiting for the right moment.
Janga was clearly at her wit's end.
Ague said he'd return the shoe, but she had to lift her ability.
And let everyone return to normal.
With only one shoe left, Amo could no longer emit her scent. So no one would protect her anymore. There is no such thing as a way to break free from the control.
Meanwhile, Delman downstairs woke up.
He had no memory of what had happened to his teammates earlier. Like Zuzu, he could only see the people he wanted to protect. But that sense of loss left him feeling disheartened. Just then, Sansi and Jianggo walked over. Only then did Delman realize the magnitude of the trouble he had caused. Fortunately, Sansi had stopped him in time.
They never expected that woman named Amo would be so difficult to deal with.
The fragrance she released made people recall happy moments spent with their loved ones. The crushing sense of loss after waking from the illusion was enough to shatter a person's will completely.
Jianggu couldn't help but lament the cruelty in her ability.
This time, though, everyone had put on masks. Ague had also kept his promise and returned her shoes.
Even if she left after leaking information, they couldn't just abandon her.
Her ability was, in a sense, extremely dangerous. But that was only because her spiritual artifact was so unique. Without the spiritual artifact, she was just a fragile girl. Besides, the spiritual artifact was her treasure, discarding it would be no different from robbery. So, all they needed to do was teach her a small lesson to stop her from hurting others. She was also furious about her house being destroyed. She angrily demanded if these people had no sense of guilt at all. Jianggu couldn't help but want to step forward and argue with her. But just then, Rosao suddenly removed his mask beside her. Under everyone's puzzled gazes, he said, "By now, I've seen all kinds of people." But Rosao's appearance was completely different from the others. At that moment, Amo was still happy he had taken off his mask. Had he already been enchanted by her fragrance? But the next second, Rosao punched her in the face in front of everyone. His previously blank expression twisted into something monstrous. Then he began brutally beating the beautiful girl's face. Amo's mind went completely blank. But unexpectedly, something in Rosao's mind was swelling. If one had to describe it, it was like a curse capable of destroying the world. No one had expected him to react so extremely. In the end, Ankuer and Guzi had to rush forward to pull him off. This shocked Guzi as well. The girl's face was left unrecognizable after the beating. Did he really have no mercy just because she was a girl? Guzi shot back, "Should we go easy just because our opponent is a woman? Should we just stand by and watch our loved ones get killed by her?" Guzi felt something stir deep within him. At the word weakness, Guzi roared in fury. If physical wounds can heal, then what about the pain in one's heart? She trampled on their sincerity. That's exactly why Guzizi had to hit her. At that moment, everyone fell silent because they knew Guzizi was right. Ankue didn't say anything more. Didn't you want to know about the heavenly realm anymore? Guzizi stared for a moment at the once beautiful face now swollen beyond recognition. He didn't know what to do next. Ankue sighed in resignation. No matter what, someone had to clean up the mess. But having to deal with his messes was still frustrating.
So he took Guzizizi away and left Tashi to bandage Amo. Guzizizi thought Nkue would scold him.
But Nkue just looked at him, knowing he already realized his mistake.
So he decided not to say anything more.
He forgot his original goal, letting emotions take over.
Without these traits, he wouldn't be Guzizizi. Back in the heavenly realm, I always had to endure.
No matter how others treated me, I couldn't get angry, I had to hold it in.
Guzizizi suddenly realized he had reverted to his old self.
Before learning restraint, he was someone who always took out his darkness on others, a real piece of work. After everything he'd been through, he still acted like an idiot.
You're just a brat who thinks he's grown up.
The feeling overwhelmed him. Then Nkue suddenly spoke up, saying he liked kind women, those with fiery figures, alluring, and more forgiving than himself.
But he couldn't stand those annoying women and children. But if any woman heard that, she'd definitely be furious.
His inability to keep his true feelings to himself was his biggest flaw. Even adults who seem mature still have plenty of room for improvement. So what he needed to work on was his ability to observe and understand emotions. Someone had pointed this out before, but now Zusuo realized it himself.
This just means you still have room to grow.
So there's no need to worry about it. Make sure to apologize to her properly later.
We never intended to go this far. If you don't mind, I can talk to her anytime. She could be a great mother.
I never expected her to say that. But unexpectedly, Anmo mentioned her mother too, saying she owed everything to her. She had just met her first love, received her own spiritual artifact, and was lucky enough to witness angels traveling between heaven and earth. Everyone was stunned, no one expected her to bring it up herself.
Recalling the angels traveling between heaven and earth. Recalling the angels traveling between heaven and earth.
Anmo remembered how, as a child, she'd call out to her mother whenever she saw black birds. But her mother said birds wouldn't like a child like her. Though her mother could take her to meet someone who would. A man was waiting in the distance, someone who supposedly adored her.
Anmo was overjoyed, but her tone suddenly turned strange as she spoke.
Then the man gave her mother a bag of money and took her to a tall tower. He said this would be her home from now on. And the greedy look in that man's eyes would soon become her next nightmare. There were picture books, food, and pretty clothes she'd never seen before, things she liked. But she could only have them after completing all the rituals. The man said he was a transporter, and everything came from his work. Though she was a precious spiritual medium, her caution had been exploited by those transporters. In his anger, he dragged Anmo into another ritual to relieve his stress. Every time Anmo did that, her heart would race.
At the time, Anmo didn't realize she was being manipulated. She just thought it felt nice. Then, in her world, twisted flowers and echoing laughter.
She woke up in bed, wearing clean striped clothes, and smiled foolishly at the person she considered her first love.
But unexpectedly, 2 uninvited guests arrived that day. The same people who had killed Zusuo's foster father.
Their peaceful home was invaded, and her uncle lost control in his rage. Right after, her uncle took a brutal punch.
I'm about to make my move. If you don't leave immediately, the masked man then handed uncle's prized possession to an MO. He believed this item suited the girl better. This was the first time an MO had ever received a gift from someone. The other party seemed to only want to use this tower to fly into the sky.
Until the right moment comes, I'll let her admire it first. Please cherish and use it well. Then, an MO was stunned to see a pair of wings sprout from the masked man's back. From that moment on, angels became an unforgettable presence in her eyes. At that instant, light returned to Anmo's eyes. But just then, her uncle woke up from his unconscious state. And Mo worried if his wounds were causing him pain. Instead, her uncle flew into a rage because his prized boots had been given to an Mo again. His usual composure shattered as he stomped violently on Mo's head. He even insulted her, calling her something that only existed because of him. And Mo suddenly felt extremely uneasy. It was clear she had been brainwashed into losing all sense of self. But now, she felt a strange restlessness. She soon realized it was these boots that were making her feel this way. If that's the case, then these boots truly belong to her. Since they're mine now, you'll have to pay a price to get them back. Just then, Zhu Zuo returned, interrupting her thoughts. He had come to apologize, only to find her speaking about the very information he needed. When the prized possession resonated with Anmo's emotions, her uncle was completely stunned. Clearly, only the rightful owner could use it properly. Though an Mo didn't understand what a prized possession was. Someone had told her these boots suited her better. As long as she held them, she felt something filling the emptiness inside her. Like finding a missing puzzle piece or a wind-up toy that had come back to life. So, an Mo began pleading with her eyes to keep the boots. But her uncle panicked, shouting that she wasn't allowed to touch his things while already trying to snatch them back. Clearly, he had taken plenty of things from others himself. Besides, an Mo had politely asked if he would give her the boots. And that angel had said the boots suited her better.
So she could keep them for herself, right?
But her uncle's expression grew more terrifying, his eyes bulging as if he wanted to devour her. He claimed he wanted to teach her a lesson, but it was just an excuse to mistreat her again. But now that an MO had regained some of her emotions, she wouldn't let him strip away her dignity. Courage surged within her, along with something far darker. So before she did something irreversible, an MO begged him to leave the boots with her. She was willing to do anything to keep them. Uncle C let out a low growl, seeing AMO as a traitor in his eyes. He was used to everything belonging to him and couldn't tolerate AMO's sudden defiance. Uncle C began to despise her, despite usually being so gentle with her demands.
Amo instantly flew into a rage, sharply demanding why he was acting this way.
She had already humbled herself, begging him for mercy. But he still refused her request. He had once promised to love her forever, yet now his eyes were filled with nothing but hatred. Not only did he make things difficult for her, but he also yanked her hair, and the two of them grappled with each other. Suddenly, Amo seized the chance to shove Uncle C, watching as he tumbled from the tower.
Only then did Amo regain her senses. After a loud crash, Amo stared blankly at the bloodstain. Her heart was pounding wildly. She couldn't understand what her past life with Uncle C had meant, or why her mother had sent her to him. The answer flashed in her mind the next second: she had been sold. Even though it was the truth, Amo tried not to dwell on it. The most important thing now was that those boots were finally hers. She wasn't a killer, just someone who had been loved. The lingering scent of Uncle C in the boots made Amo try to believe he had been her beautiful first love. Then, she awakened her power, craving to be loved by everyone. A month later, Amo saw the angel descend again, but this time, he was alone. No one expected her to suddenly reveal her past, mentioning the angel. Was the angel truly from the heavenly realm? Was growing wings some kind of spiritual ability? Amo always spoke with a fairy tale-like imagination. But if angels truly existed, how had he crossed the so-called boundaries? Faced with these questions, Amo began to stammer. But then, Nkue asked a key question: when had the angel returned to the mortal world?
She said it was a month ago, almost the same time Zuzua had fallen. When Amo drew the mask of that person, Zuzua immediately recognized him as the one who had taken his foster father's life. Zuzua never expected to meet him here, his smile twisted, thinking he'd never get the chance for revenge.
What perfect timing. No matter why he was here or if he was hunting him, it didn't matter. As long as he was in the mortal realm, he could find him. Since he was here, he would track him down. Then, he'd force him to reveal how to return to the heavenly realm before making him suffer for his foster father's death. Bring him to his father's grave to repent. At that moment, Amo saw his expression and realized he was just like her. He, too, had rediscovered human emotions through those gloves. His inner emptiness like an endless abyss. To fill that void, he had to reclaim his humanity. Who knew they'd unexpectedly get along? But becoming human had made her understand many things she hadn't before. Just like what her uncle did to her before, and how lonely it was to be alone here, she wanted to stay by someone's side. To become someone who was needed by others. But she never dared to leave this garden, only waiting for others to discover her and be willing to build a relationship with her. Amo knew Lulu had come to apologize, but she had also made mistakes before. But there was no need for such an apology at all. Because everyone raised their hands to strike, so the world wouldn't change. But they could learn how to treat others better. Try to build connections and hold each other's hands. Amo had finally met someone who treated her sincerely. In the end, she decided to stay here and, after sorting out her thoughts, might go find Lulu. They also left their contact information with Amo, since they hadn't gathered any information about the border anyway. On the other hand, Amo was still happy after seeing Lulu off, hoping they could stay the night here next time they visited. But unexpectedly, a dark figure appeared behind her. And Amo let out a terrified scream. Sa's expression was grim, but at least they had achieved decent results. After saying goodbye to Amo, Zuzwa and the others set off on their return journey. But due to driving day and night, Nkue was completely exhausted. If Guzi had taken over driving at night, they might have ended up sleeping at the bottom of a cliff by now. At this moment, Zuzwa winced in pain. Though Zemlin's tattoo had deflected the fatal blow, the wounds from the wire cutting into his flesh couldn't heal. Now that they had left the restricted area, there was a small town nearby where they could treat their wounds. But when Zuzwa saw the clinic, it felt strangely familiar. Then, upon seeing the loud, white-haired old woman, Zuzwa immediately realized things were about to take a turn for the worse. The nearest and most reliable clinic was this one. Nkue explained that the old woman had been one of the earliest renowned physicians involved in researching item poisoning. Due to inhaling pollutants, she had developed the lasting side effect of speaking very loudly. You should call me by my name now. I'm Alicia Su, the owner of this place. Remember it, such a lovely name. Look at these two odd cleaners, brother and sister. Zhuozhua then learned they were the old woman's grandchildren. After the girl finished treating the external wounds, Augustus took his sister and returned to headquarters first. He told Nkuei that a black cloud was coming and they should find shelter. The so-called black cloud was the waste rain dumped by the heavenly realm, discarded items falling into the lower world, causing disasters. But since the heavenly realm's movement path was fixed, they could easily avoid it by finding shelter in advance. However, since objects fell from great heights, it was inevitable that some people would be harmed. This was also one of the reasons why people in the lower world resented those from the heavenly realm. At this moment, Zhu Zhao recalled seeing a vast black cloud at the border when he fell. But the surroundings were too hazy, and Zhu Zhao was struggling to recall what had happened. Angwi's bracelet suddenly received a call from the Purification Squad headquarters. She said it would be best for Angwi and the others to return through the back door, as heavily armed thugs were lurking at the main entrance. It seemed an all-out battle was inevitable. Just then, Angwi steered the car into a narrow alley. Zhu Zhao was confused. What was a hand-drawn thing? Angwi then grabbed an umbrella from the driver's seat and poked a human-shaped button on the wall. This was the emergency back door used by the Purification Squad. At that moment, the thugs immediately fired a rocket at the headquarters building. They had assumed the Purification Squad was hiding someone from the heavenly realm and that the place would be heavily fortified, but it was destroyed far too easily. With the thugs attacking, Zhu Zhao could no longer stay still. Angwi sighed in resignation, just finished a mission and now had to work overtime. But the thugs shouted that if they handed over Zhu Zhao, they would leave peacefully. Disasters knew how to start from the ground up, but a direct attack was far more satisfying. After the smoke cleared, the Purification Squad headquarters remained unscathed, but the thugs didn't seem to care. Even those trying to sneak in through the side door left empty-handed, as the place was as solid as a fortress. No matter what, the Purification Squad headquarters was guarded by the strongest parasites. No one could enter without permission. Then, Semi-Wu appeared before them with an elegant demeanor. Since the main team isn't back yet, I'll handle them myself. Provoked by a woman, the thugs flew into a rage and fired another rocket. But once Semi-Wu activated her spiritual energy item, dodging the rocket was child's play. In the thug's eyes, Semi-Wu seemed to teleport. And a swift high kick sent the man flying. When Aguay arrived, the scene was a mess, hard to look at. Those corrupted by the items were truly despicable. Was this lady just an office worker? Yet her strength was on par with a regular Purification Squad member. But now she was curious, where had the rumor about someone from the heavenly realm come from? The only ones who could stand against them were the bandits they had fought before. It seemed they had been active recently. In truth, many people disliked the Purification Squad's methods, and had no goodwill toward any interdimensional beings. Humans had to rely on certain items to survive, and that feeling was deeply unsettling. In the eyes of the wealthy merchants, the Purification Squad was no different from a gang of ruthless bandits. When he saw Zhu Zhao nearby, the boy's eyes were strangely red. This was the fate of those who fought against monsters. Thinking of those who had faced monsters and ended up like this, Uncle C quickly turned away, pretending not to see, and bolted from the bar like a rabbit. To his surprise, Zuzu only felt a little embarrassed after seeing Ziju sneak a sip of his drink. Every time they eat, their table manners always startle people. It's like they're eating as if there won't be a next meal. But Ziju feels that eating together after finishing work is the happiest part. Zuzu asked if this was really the time to worry about attacks. But as long as they still had the strength to eat, they could keep trying next time. Besides, it was always Saimi who dealt with the attackers. Though she wasn't a professional fighter, anyone without extraordinary abilities or tricks couldn't escape her notice. Her abilities might not work against monsters, but underestimating this representative girl would be a huge mistake. Additionally, depending on the value of the important items, the brokers themselves could vary greatly. This piqued Zuzu's curiosity again. Anki said the next person they'd meet would definitely shock him. The one who had given them so much trouble was nothing like he expected, a little girl in a doll-like dress. This mischievous doll-like girl was named Jita, and the little boy they'd met earlier, who was sucking on a pacifier, was called Dia. The one leading them was Captain Buzwa, though he acted more like a kindergarten teacher. This gathering was mainly because yesterday's disaster revealed the man from the bar who had spread Zuzu's information. The man had approached them on purpose, inciting them to attack the cleanup crew. That way, they could avoid risks and find weaknesses in the crew. Meanwhile, Zuzu was flustered by Jita's antics. Just as he found a quiet corner to rest, a strange man approached and asked if he was in trouble. Zuzu tried to brush him off, but the man suddenly mentioned the ruin specialists from the bandit group. He seemed to know them very well. With their various tricks, one wrong move and they'd snatch things away easily. Ah, now I remember, they're looking for something like this. Seeing Anmo's boots made Zuzu realize something was off. Suddenly, the man grabbed his throat and admitted he was the leader of the bandit group.
If the weather forecast says there's a big storm outside, you should prepare ahead of time. Zuzu didn't hesitate to throw a punch, and Enki and the others were pulled into the tunnel trying to save him. Who would have thought the man would show up so openly? What kind of sparks would fly in this next confrontation? After being sucked underground, the two sides finally came face to face for the first time. Zuzu's eyes burned with anger as he demanded to know where the ruin specialist leader, Anmo, was. The man didn't care, they just wanted to capture Zhuozhuo, and this time, they'd throw in a fruit as a bonus. But the man had expected this. The residents of the lower realm were always on guard, and the cleanup crew wouldn't let Zuzo act alone. As the man turned the firm pocket watch in his hand, a deafening roar echoed through the air. The sewer gates erupted, spewing a torrent of trash like a flood, threatening to swallow the cleaning crew whole. Zhuozhuo was pulled aside, while the others were swept away by the tide of garbage. Unlike the panicked reactions of his teammates, Nkue sat calmly on his umbrella. The cleaning crew members were scattered, vanishing in different directions. Once the trash flood subsided, his teammates had disappeared without a trace. Zhuozhuo was thrown to the ground by the man, staring fiercely at the deep pit ahead. Then glaring at the man with burning hatred, demanding to know where he had taken their companions. The man offered no explanation, raising his hand instead, summoning 4 portal gates in the air. The 4 destruction specialists behind him stepped through the gates one by one. We'll give those unexpected guests a proper welcome. For now, you'll stay here and keep our leader company. Amo, this is why you're furious. I've come to share that fury with you. I am Zhuoding Tifeng. Do you want to pull the celestial realm from its throne with me? At his words, Zhuozhuo's mind flashed with visions of the celestial realm crumbling into ruin. Isn't that your goal in life right now? Zhuoding saw through Zhuozhuo's hesitation. Though he had never seen the celestial realm nor knew what it looked like, he wasn't aiming to bring it down, he just wanted to deal with the man in front of him. Zhuoding's words struck a chord deep within Zhuozhuo. Zhuozhuo wasn't thinking of those he cherished, only how his enemies would suffer. Though his thoughts had been exposed, Zhuozhuo was more concerned about what Zhuoding had done to Amo and the others. Zhuoding calmly extended a finger, saying he had already answered the question in his own way. One question, one answer, that's how conversations work. He disliked wasting time, so no more talking. Zhuoding's words seemed calm, yet carried an unmistakable air of authority. Zhuozhuo sensed danger, he hadn't even had time to put on his armor. If it came down to it, he'd have to fight with everything he had. Zhuoding showed no immediate intent to attack, instead questioning the meaning of Zhuozhuo's joining the cleaning crew. Did you really think joining the cleaning crew would get you back? Their operations don't include trips to the celestial realm. They only brought you along as an afterthought. This realization nearly broke Zhuozhuo. Are you satisfied with how things are now? The rest of the cleaning crew had been scattered. Jita was swept away alone to a place filled with sewer roots. Nkue was carried into a corridor, his sharp gaze locked onto a short-haired boy standing behind a door across from him. The other person looks a little scared. Dia and Bo are together, facing a man in a cowboy hat. While Zhuozhuo was observing the surroundings, a portal appeared behind her. A demolition expert stepped out of the portal. He sneered at Dilu, who looked like a lost little girl, not cute at all. Dilu fired back, this seemed to be a one-on-one battle. Nazud had to complete his mission. Zhuoding took the lead, bringing everyone underground, where the popularity bracelets couldn't connect. He had ordered the others that if anyone besides Zhuozhuo followed, they must take them down one-on-one. And Nazud intended to use Dilu as his sacrifice. Though Dilu didn't want to fight, she had to end this quickly to find and rescue her companions. She rushed at Nazud and launched an attack. Nazud dropped to the ground again, barely dodging the strike by hugging the floor. Nazud quickly got up and retreated, putting distance between himself and Dilu. Dilu kept attacking. Even if she dodged once, she couldn't let her guard down. Dilu didn't want to stain the popularity item with blood, so she tried to avoid harming him directly. Dilu guessed Nazud's power source was the popularity item, so she must be fighting with her hair. Fighting against hair, Dilu clearly had the advantage. A battle between cuteness and cruelty had begun. Jianka came face to face with his old rival, their eyes burning with hatred. Without a word, both drew their popular items at the same time. With no further hesitation, Jayabur appeared before Jianka in an instant. All Jianka could think of was this. After stepping back, Jayabur muttered to himself that this area would soon be flooded with an unknown liquid. I don't know what it's made of, but touching it will cause burns. He even tested it with the back of his hand, wearing a satisfied expression. Meanwhile, Jianka noticed that Jayabur's claws were dripping with that black liquid. The neurotoxin on Jayabur's right claw was fixed and unchanging. But his left claw had been infused with a new toxin, one he had personally tested. Then, he swung his left hand, hurling a barrage of toxic liquid at Jianka. Liang Jianka was scorched by the toxin, but he used the staff of love to scoop up a clump of earth, blocking most of the liquid. Jianka hadn't expected him to stand his ground, but this toxin didn't impair his physical functions. To Jianka, this was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. At least it's better than getting his clothes dirty. Now he'd get a taste of what it's like to be bitten. Though the rock struck Jayabur, he didn't dodge, leaving Jianka puzzled. Jayabur wouldn't go down so easily. Jianka cautiously circled to the other side of the rock and spotted something strange beneath it. Before Jianka could think further, Jayabur's manic laughter echoed. As the rock crumbled, a circular object emerged. As the object expanded, Jayabur's aura surged, and his blood-sucking claws grew even larger. Jianka was speechless. He hadn't expected that, even now. Jayabur had never truly gone all out. Let's have a proper fight. Not only was Jayabur in trouble, but Chizu's swift and sharp attacks seemed to have no effect on Nizud. What's going on? Touching his hair sent a sharp pain through me. I coexist with static, so my hair isn't soft, it crackles with electricity. Unlike the suffocating standoff between the two, the atmosphere among Dia, Bersha, and the cowboy hat-wearing man was much more relaxed. The man in the cowboy hat was named Bendu. Bersha sensed no hostility from him, suggesting he didn't want a real fight. Bendu was here on Zwiding's orders, but he had his own agenda. If Bendu got what he wanted, a battle could be avoided. But Bendu said he could only choose one after defeating all of them. This left Bersha confused. Just then, Dia gently tugged Bersha's sleeve. Bersha looked down and saw a severed finger on the ground. The finger had two tendrils for movement, which shocked Bersha. Something on Bendu's left shoulder began to burn, and what fell from the finger was the information Bendu sought. If Bersha exchanged information with him, Bendu could tell him the consequences of the cleanup crew's defeat. In just a short while, even more severed fingers and hands crawled out. Meanwhile, Bendu wanted to know what kind of person Kobut, the leader of the cleanup crew, was. He said Du Zhuo and the others had been captured by the saboteurs and were unreachable, hoping the boss could send someone to look for them. Kobut remained calm and instructed Seymour to gather those who could act immediately, while he would handle the matter of Du Zhuo and the others. Bendu tried to extract important information about the cleanup crew through these rambling questions, but Belsho wouldn't reveal a single word. Bendu assured him that his questions stemmed from curiosity and personal interest. No matter how he answered, he wouldn't pass the information to the saboteurs. Belsho still wasn't convinced and said he'd only answer questions he wanted to. What kind of food does your brother like? Sweets. Does he usually go out? I've never seen him out. When did he join the cleanup crew? I don't know. Have you ever seen him use popular items? Never. I had planned to strike back if he asked anything harmful to us. But his questions were more normal than I expected, which felt odd. He began to feel restless and needed to come up with a plan quickly. Wrinkles formed on my face from Belsho's answers, but Burdett showed no sign of displeasure. Since it was an information exchange, Burdett revealed that if the cleanup crew lost, they'd be turned into offerings for monsters by the saboteurs. He also told Belsho that the saboteurs had already successfully created several monsters. Though Burdett spoke casually, this news was a massive blow to Belsho. Even more surprising, Burdett mentioned that someone had already hidden their true identity. At this moment, Zwiding was still teaching his philosophy to Zuju. One was from the heavenly realm, the other from the lower realm, yet they shared the same look in their eyes. This made Zwiding want to bow to Zuju directly. Bowing seemed ridiculous, though. Zuju didn't want to rely on anyone, he only wanted to bring down the heavenly realm by his own will. Don't treat me as your kind. If you have a reason to take down the heavenly realm, just invite me openly. You're dragging the cleanup crew into this, but what do you mean by normal? Among the lower realm, some see the blessings from the heavenly realm as divine gifts. Even if those blessings could pierce their bodies, they still saw them as gifts, becoming obsessed and forcing others to accept them. What others saw as abnormal behavior gradually became commonplace and eventually turned into tradition. If you resisted, you'd be labeled a heretic. This reminded Zhu Zhuo of the time he was strung up. In their eyes, he was the heretic. Even when it seems ordinary, this convention established by madmen has somehow become a potent poison, constantly corroding the human heart. In this world with no opportunities, no one knows when they've been poisoned, but there's a simple way to instantly snap someone out of a hallucination. And that's by delivering a shock. Shocks are convenient, they can forcibly drag someone out from within. Zhuo Zhuo had been dragged out like that before. It was the shock Xiaobo gave him. So now, the one fighting Xiaobo might also be pulled back to reality. Or be overwhelmed by the shock and ultimately defeated. Xiaobo had fought so many stronger opponents that he had to hold back, or else no ordinary person would stand a chance. He only gets serious when he truly can't win. That's why Xiaobo is eagerly waiting for anyone besides Zwiding, to push him to his limits. Zanka realized Xiaobo and Zhuo Zhuo were the same kind of people. If they were called geniuses, then he was just an ordinary man. Generally, an ordinary man could never defeat a genius. But that's exactly why it's worth trying. Though Zhang Ka dodged Xiaobo's attacks, this was only the beginning. Seeing Zhang Ka constantly evading, Xiaobo kept taunting him and prepared for the next strike. Dust swirled around them, and debris flew in all directions. Despite Zhang Ka's speed and quick reflexes, he barely dodged the rock Xiaobo sent flying like manic laughter, but the mocking voices around him grew louder. It made Xiaobo look less like he was fighting and more like he was toying with his opponent. Everyone thought Zhang Ka was doomed, but an unexpected turn occurred. With a fierce expression, Zhang Ka bit down on Xiaobo's claw and blocked the fatal blow. He gripped his beloved staff, his mind flashing back to memories from his childhood. I can't die. You're breaking bones and then hitting the broken spots. Are you some kind of sadist? Even an ordinary person can keep up with you. Though the strike landed on Xiaobo, as his left claw shifted, Zhang Ka couldn't dodge in midair and was hit in the shin, sending his body flying. He really got hit by the left claw. In its true mode, it can use 3 newly collected toxins. The paralyzing toxin, my favorite indulgence toxin, and the gurgling toxin from earlier. The moment Xiaobo's claw pierced his shin, Zhang Ka was poisoned and recalled past events. Zhang Ka was once the pride of the Nikiko tribe, attending the central training school. Everyone who had been to the lower realm knew the biggest threats were monsters, toxic rain, and hazardous substances. But the greatest danger was humanity itself. And the guard's duty was to keep those people in check. Back then, Zhang Ka was an exceptionally talented student. He always stood at the top of the school. To his peers, Muzin Ka always seemed carefree, almost like a genius. Yet, only he knew how much effort he had put in to earn that proud reputation. If things continued like this, without any surprises, he would surely claim the highest rank upon graduation. Then, like his older siblings, he would become a true guard. Maybe that's what they all thought. But if you lump me in with everyone else here, I'll be annoyed. Do you have any idea how hard I've worked? However, the arrival of a girl named Amo shattered Zhang Ka's illusions. She swiftly defeated him, the so-called genius. Amo came from a common family. True to her name, her personality was as cold as ice. Classmates began whispering about her strength. They never expected Zhang Ka to lose to her. Still, he forced a smile in front of his peers. But after witnessing her fighting style firsthand, he realized how far behind he truly was. He took the chance to slip away afterward. When they saw the genius finally taste defeat, his friends' admiring gazes shattered. Standing alone by the sink, Zhang Ka's face twisted with frustration. He bit his lip hard, drawing blood, yet felt no pain. His mind kept replaying the duel with Amo. He had barely put up any resistance. She moved with terrifying speed, subduing him in an instant. She was like a ghost wielding a dagger, closing in from behind. Zhang Ka refused to accept his defeat. He told himself he just hadn't tried hard enough. Just then, Amo's voice came from behind him. Zhang Ka froze for a moment before turning around casually to speak to her. Knowing she was only there for water, he silently reminded himself to stay calm. Ever since Amo enrolled, she had become a strong contender for the top position. But Amo didn't care about any of that. She asked Zhang Ka what the point was of sitting in that seat. The question left him speechless. After a pause, he answered it was a symbol of glory and power, the pride of a guard. He didn't know why his sister hadn't taken that position, but it was undeniably something everyone desired. But it was just a chair, after all. Did sitting in it really mean anything? It was just about making others think you were impressive. Those words exposed Zhang Ka's harsh truth. A boy who had grown up basking in praise finally realized something. True geniuses could see right through the phonies. And this kind of hypocrisy is always so easily exposed. Some girls try to imitate Amo's style. Others go out of their way to curry favor with her. And then there are those who constantly mock her behind her back. This pains Zanka deeply. But what hurt the most was realizing he wasn't so different from those hypocrites after all. The instructor ordered everyone to summon the weapon best suited to their will. Looking at the weapons on the table, Zanka's gaze suddenly locked onto a strangely shaped staff. Just to stand out, Zanka decided to pick that staff. That choice would change his life forever. After Zanka made his choice, the instructor and his classmates stared at him in disbelief. Unable to bear their probing gazes, Zanka ran off and hid in a dry well. He sat there for 3 whole days without eating or drinking. Suddenly, a voice called down to him, a man in a bamboo hat, munching on pastries. He said the weapon was utterly useless. That stung even more. The staff wasn't even a real weapon. The school must have mixed it in by mistake. Amo, on the other hand, hadn't picked anything unusual. She had just chosen a very ordinary sword. It was almost laughable. Really? Seeing Zanka so dejected, the man in the bamboo hat spoke up. All that matters is if an ordinary person can surpass a genius. Those words struck Zanka like lightning.
The man admitted he wasn't even sure what made someone a genius.
But if Zenka truly wanted to be recognized as strong, all his grand talk aside, his heart still burned with passion.
Even if it's just a plain wooden stick, aren't you still gripping it tightly? Only by acknowledging your weaknesses can you grow stronger.
We'll come back to this town for steamed buns someday.
You'll have to prove it to me then.
The moment an ordinary person surpasses a genius.
When his initial resolve was reignited, Zenka's face lit up with excitement.
He strained with all his might to stand.
Meanwhile, the jailer watching him grew intrigued again. I won't die until I've proven this.
That's the determination of an ordinary man. A dry, rasping sound echoed as Jean-Ca still lay on the ground.
He still couldn't stand up right away.
Jabot, meanwhile, sat casually beside him, watching. Seeing Jean-Ca like this, he suddenly burst into laughter.
Jean-Ca couldn't help but laugh along.
Oh right, and my favorite hallucinogenic poison.
How do you feel?
I just injected it into you without a second thought.
That stuff is pretty intense, huh?
By this time, Jita had walked through many corridors but still hadn't seen a single person.
She didn't even know where she was anymore.
Fortunately, a little lamb had been keeping her company. When the lamb suddenly flew away, Jita hurried after it.
Let's make you a sacrifice to the monster.
The secret of the most terrifying secret society is about to be revealed. The battle between Xiao and Nettie continued. Xiao had just recovered from his paralyzed state. He remained poised, ready to counter any attack from Nettie. With a blinding flash of lightning, Nettie, her face twisted in fury, closed in on Xiao.
Their duel erupted once more.
After dodging Nettie's long hair, Xiao spun gracefully in midair. Having just evaded her attack, he took the chance to put some distance between them. Nettie noticed Xiao was trying to avoid direct contact and used wind to scatter her hair. But when Nettie took out a comb and gently ran it through her hair, a powerful static charge crackled to life. Watching her hair snap and pop with electricity, Xiao recalled how he'd used wind to disperse it earlier. He seemed to realize something. The next second, he turned and bolted, a move that infuriated Nettie. Without hesitation, she chased after Xiao, but as soon as she turned the corner, he vanished from her sight completely. After searching for Xiao for so long, Nettie grew even more enraged. She shouted at the top of her lungs, trying to provoke him into showing himself.
Yet no matter how many arenas she crossed, Xiao remained nowhere to be found.
This pushed Nettie to the brink of losing control. She hurled crude insults at Xiao.
Running away like this is pathetic. I can't stand people like you.
Meanwhile, Xiao was hiding in a dark corner, smirking to himself.
Looks like his hunch was right, there must be a time limit on that ability, right? Managed to dodge her, huh?
Nettie's meticulously nurtured long hair could be controlled freely through her nervous system. Nettie's artifact is called Mize, and the static electricity it generates can only last for 2 minutes at most. Of course, she can also deactivate it manually. Xiao once thought her weakness might be wind. He even planned to make the surrounding leaves swirl. But if her real weakness is the time limit, that would be a huge help to him. However, Nettie showed no panic about her weakness at all. As a warrior, she must know how to compensate for her flaws. With that, she quickly launched an attack at Xiao. Xiao dodged repeatedly, weaving left and right. He skillfully evaded Nettie's strikes. Her attacks came relentlessly, like a raging tiger. Observing her movements, Xiao suddenly felt a sense of familiarity. He asked Nettie what she used to do. It turned out Nettie was once part of a female tribe in the south. That was the Purple World Clan, a renowned warrior tribe. Unfortunately, I've never heard of them. It's understandable that you wouldn't know. Because that tribe was wiped out long ago. From their close combat, Nettie noticed Xiao's movements. Didn't seem suited for large weapons. Though Zhou didn't agree, he still decided to put away his scissors. Because Zhou was always formidable in one-on-one battles. After witnessing so many intense showdowns, please enjoy this 2-minute martial arts duel, one side adorable, the other ultra cool. This is one of the rare fights that feels truly intense and suffocating. At this moment, Zhou was scanning the surroundings. No matter how much he called for help in this depth, no one would hear, yet Nettie mistakenly thought he was seeking outside assistance. She smirked and said that after this battle, he and his allies would become offerings. Nettie suddenly felt the era had changed too much, but what puzzled her more was where Zhou's strength came from. In truth, Zhou had been holding back from the start, as Bo had previously ordered him not to kill. Thus, Zhou fought without intending to take Nettie's life. But her strength was truly astonishing. He had to use his Imperial Chi to end the fight quickly and protect his companions from falling into enemy hands. This was Zhou's unwavering conviction in battle. He had sworn never to let his scissors be stained with blood again. Therefore, he could only use the treasure gifted by his former superior. Only now did Nettie suddenly realize the truth. It turns out Zaya used to be a professional assassin. Let's keep this our little secret.
Perhaps Needy should be grateful Bersak held Zaya back, otherwise, she might not have survived. He immediately demanded to know where her captured companions were being held. By this point, Needy was completely immobilized. All she could do was call out to her friend with teleportation abilities to save her. At first, Needy thought all members of the cleanup crew were kind. She never expected someone like him, with such a dark past, to be among them. Unfortunately, only Zwudding and the girl with teleportation abilities knew the location. Pipes of all sizes crisscrossed the area, resembling blood vessels. He quickly shed his outer layer and slipped into the pipes. Meanwhile, Jabo was thrilled after defeating Zenka and earned Zwudding's praise. After finishing his task, Zaya suddenly noticed Zenka lying motionless in the distance. He rushed over to check on his companion's condition. But Zenka was still trapped in a terrifying hallucination. Seeing the veins bulging on Zenka's face, Zaya could only sigh in frustration. For now, the only option was to find a way out of this wretched place. No matter how difficult or exhausting the journey, they had to. Perhaps the two of them had already escaped their fate as sacrifices. Elsewhere, Bazuo and the young Fry had just heard gunshots. Unlike Bazuo's calm demeanor, Fry appeared panicked and terrified. The gunfire meant the others had already finished their battle. He mused to himself that if he didn't act quickly, he would surely face Zwudding's punishment. After being told that failure would make them offerings, the young Fu, unsure how to start the fight, begged Bozua to attack him first. Faced with such an absurd and bizarre request, Bozua naturally refused outright. Meanwhile, Zwudding had learned of the battle's progress through Pa Zi, who possessed spatial teleportation abilities. The girl who could teleport spoke up. But Zwudding told Zuzua that the cleanup squad's members were more resilient than he had expected. No matter how much Zuzua protested or objected, Zwudding still ordered Pa Zi to prepare for spatial teleportation. A magic circle instantly appeared beneath Zuzua's feet, sucking him into a terrifying, bottomless abyss. Zuzua suddenly sensed a familiar presence. Next, he was thrown into a room that resembled a massive heart. Despite Zuzua's relentless insults, Zwudding could only smile bitterly in silence. He had hoped someone from the heavenly realm with a calmer temperament would have fallen here instead. Jita hid behind a pile of rocks nearby, while June trembled in fear. Zwudding knew the plan to send Zuzua to the heavenly realm had failed, so now he could only let Zuzua witness everything firsthand. This is part of a set known as the Observer Artifacts, My Coat. Zuzua's gloves. Eventually, Zuzua understood the secret behind these gloves. Amo's shoes, Zwudding's coat, and Zuzua's gloves. These spirit artifacts, adorned with mysterious patterns, were a complete collection. When Zwudding placed Amo's shoes into it, the once cold, heart-like object suddenly pulsed with life. Though Zwudding sensed the immense power within the shoes, his calculations showed it still wasn't enough. Countless questions flooded Zuzua's mind. If this was a complete set, there must be other items. So why were treasures from the lower realm in Zito's possession? Zwudding also found this hard to believe. Someone from the heavenly realm like Zuzua, who knew nothing about spirit artifacts, somehow possessed the highest grade observer gloves. And even after becoming their wielder, he had kept his sanity. Hearing this, Zuzua stared at the gloves in horror, unable to grasp Zwudding's deeper meaning. He revealed that the observer artifacts had once been part of someone's body. Zuzua had also experienced that unfathomable surge of power. All of this had been created by one person using their own strength. Each piece carried an intensely strong obsession. If an ordinary person without the capacity tried to possess them, it would surely drive them to madness or insanity. Zuzua clenched the glove tightly, his expression incredibly grave. He had used it for a long time, yet he remained completely normal and clear-headed. A distant sadness flickered in Zwudding's eyes, but this also meant that people like them had lost an important part of the human soul. Zuzua stared at him in shock, everything he had endured in the heavenly realm seeming to confirm Zwudding's words as true. Noticing Zuzua gradually succumbing to pessimism, Zwudding quickly explained that this was precisely why they could wield such overwhelming power. Then, what would happen when enough observers were gathered to achieve the ultimate goal? He had to uncover everything and conduct the most ruthless experiments. Though previous experiments had ended in failure, his efforts were not in vain. He used discarded artifacts from the Observer clan as energy cores, combined with the life force of sacrificed individuals, to create beings known as pseudo-abominations. All of this was merely part of a large-scale experiment. Even contact with the cleanup squad was just a means to strike at the heavenly realm. This was an experiment of immense value. Only now did Zuzua realize the truth. When Zwudding placed the shoe into that heart, his words fly had another hidden meaning. It turned out they were now inside an abomination, a man-made monster that would carry them all beyond boundaries and move forward. By then, we will know who survives and who perishes here. It seems weather forecasts aren't entirely useless, now we're under the favor of the wind god. Jita was still curled up in the corner out of fear, but after hearing Zwudding and Zuzua's conversation, she suddenly grew excited.
So we're inside a monster. This is one huge and terrifying beast. Violent tremors signaled the pseudo-abomination was about to take flight, leaving even Beersuo and the boy Fu unable to stay calm. Fu suddenly realized something important. This must be Zhuo Ding urging him to act faster. He pleaded with Beersuo to strike first, but Beersuo had no intention of complying. Once the tremors stopped, he immediately stood up and left. He wanted to find the other companions. The boy Fu was so anxious he was nearly frantic, quietly following behind Beersuo. His weakness being that without orders, he didn't know what to do. That was why he longed for Beersuo to take action against him. Baiso merely smiled faintly and replied, "If you refuse to reveal how to escape from here and where my companions are imprisoned, then I have no interest in fighting you at all. If we use spiritual energy to violently break through this wall, we'll surely find a way out because we're inside the belly of a monster. But if I do that, will you fight me?" Not a chance. The violent tremors had a severe impact on Dia and Baiso as well. Dia suddenly began trembling in fear, forcing Baiso to keep reassuring his friend. Buduan expressionlessly revealed a shocking piece of news, saying they were now rapidly ascending into the sky. Trying to comprehend what lay above, Buduan explained that the strange beast they were riding was the only means of reaching the heavenly realm. At the mention of strange beast, Baiso's face instantly darkened. Dia also shot a cold, wary glance. Clearly, the cleanup squad had struck a nerve. Their expertise wasn't in dealing with humans, but the moment strange beast was mentioned, they were forced to act immediately. Dia and Baiso simultaneously released their spiritual energy. Sensing the overwhelming bloodlust, Buduan was stunned. This was exactly what he had anticipated. Only one thing puzzled him: if they were inside a strange beast, why were they, without masks, still unharmed? After all, the larger the monster, the more toxins it emits. Though he claimed it was a special case, Buduan himself doubted it. But for now, the priority was dealing with the opponents in front of him. Suddenly, Baiso transformed his headscarf into an ordinary rope. Before Buduan could react, Baiso forcefully flung Dia away. Buduan was completely taken aback by this unexpected move. Dia's eyes burned with ferocity as he soared right over Buduan's head. Following Dia's trajectory, Buduan finally grasped their intent. And just as he feared, he had to stop him at all costs. No matter how innocent the child seemed, he had to face the cruelty of reality. The final strike carved a large hole in the wall. Unfortunately, the spot was still far from the outer shell of the strange beast. While Buduan was tightly restrained, he suddenly became intensely curious about Dia's energy-absorbing dummy. He plans to stop Dia's growth with his own two hands. As Buduan activated his spiritual energy, the device on his left shoulder released a massive mechanical arm. Then, he suddenly leaped high into the air. Buduan and his 6 mechanical arms began spinning at high speed, completely knocking away the ropes made from Bodo's scarf. Now, Dia and Bodo want to eliminate this strange beast to escape. But Buduan will step in to stop them both. If all goes well, he will secure victory and obtain valuable information from Zwuting. Just as the three were about to engage in battle, a violent tremor suddenly shook the area, flinging everyone uncontrollably into the air. This meant the fake beast was beginning to spread its wings, preparing for its final takeoff. Once it successfully takes to the sky, they will cross the deadly boundary, thus facing a life-or-death decision. Buduan wanted to settle things with Dia and Bodo while he had the chance. "Let me claim this victory. Get out of the way, everyone. Move." Before the three could react, a massive pile of debris suddenly blocked their path. Bodo tried to swerve the wheel sharply, but it was useless. The vehicle was mercilessly flung aside. Though heavily damaged, fortunately, it landed safely. "No, you can't touch that. Bodo, so you were here? Hey, what are you doing hanging out with the Wanda Society? This isn't the time for chit-chat." From Bodo's account, everyone learned that the Wanda Society was planning to let the beast take off, bringing everyone back to the world. "If we really cross that boundary, everyone will perish, right?" Bodo's face instantly showed panic. In that moment, he remembered Dudu. Dudu had firmly stated before that no matter what happened, he must return. If that's the case, perhaps this is Dudu's chance to return to the world. Still, Bodo couldn't help but wonder what principle this monster used to fly. But no one here knew the answer. The top priority was to find a way out and alert the others. Just then, the space around them suddenly emitted a hissing sound. That was Dia pressing the communication button on his artifact. Finally, Simiyu from the cleanup squad headquarters managed to establish contact with them. After hearing a brief report on the current situation, Simiyu exclaims that Bodo was far too reckless. "Don't you think you messed up badly? I'm truly sorry. Now we must eliminate this beast as quickly as possible and get out of here. And I have a question, we're clearly not underground. So why is the communication system so unstable?
Hearing this, Bodu's gaze suddenly lingers on Bendusi, who is sitting in the vehicle. Bendusi only responds with a mysterious look. Xiao and Zanka are still completely out of contact.
This makes Bodu realize the situation has become extremely difficult. But no matter what, he assures Sina Yu that he will do everything possible to escape and bring everyone back safely.
Bodu firmly points the tip of his umbrella toward the ground.
He solemnly states that his name was given to him by a benefactor. It comes from an ancient language, meaning one destined to meet.
He will become the symbol that connects everyone.
After all, such a large umbrella is always the most noticeable in a crowd.
Sina Yu reports an important update to Bodu.
Gebert has contacted an informant, purchased all the most suspicious intel, and pinpointed the exact location of the monster.
Reinforcements are currently on their way there. Understood. The rest is up to you, Bodu.
Elsewhere, Zhuoding continues to manipulate Daodu with his words. A once-in-6 years garbage storm is about to arrive. It will help this fake beast rise with the wind. If possible, Zhuoding doesn't want to truly sacrifice Daodu, as he still holds valuable information about the heavens. As long as Daodu is willing to abandon the cleanup crew and follow him, he will be the first to receive a ticket home. Once the final goal is achieved, all this painful history will soon come to an end. Compared to that plan, the cleanup crew is nothing more than a group of ordinary scavengers, boring and laughable in Zhuoding's eyes.
Daodu looks down at the ruins below, his resolve seemingly wavering.
Doubting urges Daodu to stop wasting his efforts if he truly has a goal to achieve. If he still holds on to his beliefs, he should ruthlessly discard the unnecessary burdens.
Stop standing there naively shouting. Otherwise, you'll only end up being betrayed. Despite Doubting's malicious words, Daodu remains silent, slowly raising his arm. He begins to speak of something seemingly unrelated. Daodu tells Doubting that he named his gloves Baza.
This name comes from an old practice where people hope to reduce waste polluting the environment. It's a term about how to most efficiently reuse waste, and now Duo fully understands it all. My encounter with him wasn't a meaningless experience after all. Because nothing in this world, whether trash or people, is truly worthless. What's more, Duo realized something. He had something Duoding could never obtain, friends ready to lend a hand at any moment. In the end, Duo no longer let anger cloud his judgment, avoiding actions he'd regret. It was his friends who gave him unwavering faith and the courage to face every challenge. After hearing Duo's words, Duoding suddenly became furious. But what he said next truly ignited Duoding's rage, pushing him past his limit. Even so, everyone still gave a hot-headed me a place to belong. They never saw a troublemaker like me as a burden to abandon. My only wish is for us all to live and play together.
So let's make it happen now. Then let me give you a prophecy. After your anger and hollow friendships fade, what do you think will consume you next? Endless regret. Just then, Bodo pierced the beast's body with spiritual energy, pinpointing Duo's location. He sneered, saying one more person wouldn't change a thing.
But no sooner had he spoken than the cleanup crew emerged one by one from the tunnel Bodo had opened.
Bodo kept his promise, becoming the bridge that united everyone. Though Jianka and Jita were still unconscious, their presence shocked Duoding. Duo broke free from Duoding's grip and declared that all his teammates were still alive. He was tired of these endless experiments. Over there was the beast's core, and here stood the cleanup crew. This meant your experiments end here, but Duoding remained confident in his plan. He wanted to see what would happen when boundaries were crossed. The final outcome was about to be revealed. At that moment, the fake beast slowly lifted off the ground, preparing to soar into the sky with a terrifying awakening storm. Dio tried to lay Jianka down to rest, but Bodo immediately noticed the move. He swore he hadn't killed anyone, but suddenly, the ground beneath them tilted sharply to one side. This showed the beast had taken a long time to truly take flight. This was truly a race against time. Suddenly, Zhuo charged forward with a sharp glare. No matter what Zhuoding said now, it was too late. All we need to do now is stop this monster. If it operates on a popularity core, then it's no different from the alien beasts Zhuo saw during his internship. So, before it reaches the sky's edge, we just need to destroy its core, and everything will be resolved. It turns out we're inside the belly of an alien beast. Zhuoding seemed to have anticipated all of this. He gave a sinister, taunting smile. The one stepping forward to block Zhuo now is Buduan, who has 6 massive mechanical arms. It turns out he's also a new member who just joined the Wanda Society for training. Looks like he was a bit too careless before. Buduan won't hold back this time. He'll go all out to attack the cleanup squad members. Zhou and Zio exchanged a meaningful glance, planning to immediately flank around to distract Buduan. But he used 2 of his mechanical arms to block their path. Right after, Dia and Zhou rushed forward to support them. However, even with attacks from 4 directions, they made no progress. All their strikes were effortlessly intercepted by the mechanical arms.
Zozo intended to use his speed to leap up and find an opening to strike the core directly.
But Buduan's mechanical arms were far too agile. With just one person, he managed to hold off the entire cleanup squad. Buduan's mechanical arms were actually prosthetic limbs he had for 5 months. Each part was made of high-quality popularity energy. He didn't believe these people could surpass him.
Humph, he still had one mechanical arm left unused. The core was right in front of him. All he had to do was destroy it. Zozo gritted his teeth in frustration. He still hadn't found a way to get past those mechanical arms. They completely sealed off all his attack routes.
No matter how hard Zozo tried, Buduan blocked him mercilessly.
Zojo and Zo dodged lethal strikes while trying to turn their umbrella into a high-speed drill.
They planned to break through the encirclement with a full-force attack. But Buduan quickly changed tactics. In an instant, 5 mechanical fingers transformed into whips, tightly coiling around Zojo's umbrella.
Seeing this, Zo immediately charged forward, trying to cut the chains and free them.
But another mechanical arm blocked his move. Zojo also tried to envelop one of Buduan's mechanical arms with his own popularity energy.
Yet, it instantly morphed into sharp claws, effortlessly tearing through all restraints.
Dia's situation was even worse than expected.
The surging mechanical arms suddenly changed shape.
Dia was left flushed and in agony. Buzo never expected Bentu to possess so many spiritual artifacts. Not only that, he could quickly master the unique traits of each of their artifacts. As a result, he devised an extremely effective counter-strategy. If Jita's abilities were here to help, they might have already broken the stalemate. Unfortunately, Jita was still unconscious. Zwiding secretly admired Bentu's ancient artifacts, especially how he had fused them into his own body. Though Bentu appeared to be someone wielding multiple artifacts at once.
If the cleanup team clung to this misconception, they would never defeat him. Just then, a girl with teleportation abilities suddenly appeared, telling Zwiding that she had retrieved Grandma's elixir.
Upon hearing this, Zwiding signaled it was time to leave. While their teammates distracted Bentu, Zuzwa planned to secretly sabotage his core.
However, he suddenly spotted a mechanical finger on the ground, too late to react to what had happened. Zuzwa was grabbed by Bentu's mechanical arm, his eyes filled with tension as he stared at Bentu in the distance. Now, he couldn't break through the other's defenses. Nor did he know what realm this spiritual beast had ascended to, or how much longer it would take to surpass him. Once surpassed, how would everyone meet their end?
Even Nkue's team couldn't break through, what could he do alone? In that instant, Zuzwa remembered his gloves. These gloves are a treasured heirloom he inherited from Zakito. Not only that, they are Zuzwa's most prized treasure. Whether in terms of seniority or the will contained within, there's no reason to lose to anyone. This is the perfect moment to amplify his power. A surge of immense energy erupts from Zuzwa in an instant. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the original nailgun undergoes a shocking transformation. Not only does its size increase several-fold, but its appearance becomes incredibly fierce and imposing. The Apocalypse Cannon makes its dramatic entrance. Zuzwa thought he had just equipped an awakened gear, but Nkue confirms it's not the case. This time, Zuzwa only wants to use this one weapon. It turns out Zuzwa's energy can convert up to 3 awakened gears or damaged items into combat weapons. This is how he distributes the glove's power across different items. But if he focuses all his energy into one, the weapon can achieve a qualitative leap. However, doing so would leave Zuzwa completely drained and collapse. Yet at this moment, Zuzwa doesn't care how badly overusing his power will affect him. A flash of light flickers and vanishes. Time for another shot. Unfortunately, this shot still misses the core. But Bird has already been shattered to pieces, and now they can destroy the core directly. Suddenly, Zwiding's face darkens ominously, putting Nkue and the others on immediate alert. After those 2 powerful cannon blasts, Zuzwa's body can't take any more. Bird lies on the ground, though its broken mechanical arms continue repairing themselves. But every time he sees his beloved treasures destroyed by others, no matter how many times it happens, it still hurts. Zuzwa's weapon has fulfilled its purpose and begins fading into the void. But Zwiding has already grasped his power, and time is running out. Outside, a massive storm of debris has formed, and the giant beast is caught in the vortex, slowly rising into the sky. It's nearing its limit, and Zwiding has gathered everything he needs. There's no reason to stay here any longer. Bird slowly stands up and walks towards Zwiding, his fingers lightly touching the large hole in his left shoulder. The fragments of the mechanical arms seem to be summoned, flying back into the dark opening. In reality, these mechanical arms were assembled from simplified parts he initially used. The device on his left shoulder is the core of Bird's human weapon. Staying cooped up in this box with the target, don't you find it odd? Needy appears, surrounded by a humanoid glow. Seeing Nighty gradually descending into madness, Zuzwa took a deep breath and quietly put away his scissors. Nighty's hair writhed like electric serpents, leaving Zuzua utterly astonished. Witnessing Nighty enter her rampage mode, Zhuading realized she intended to drag everyone into doom. To avoid getting caught up in the chaos, Zhuading urged Huan'ai to leave as soon as possible. Before leaving, Zhuading didn't forget to remind Zuzua to remember the resolve needed when abandoning what matters most. Once everything is over, he will return to retrieve Zizi, the guardian. Zuzua could only watch helplessly as Zhuading departed. He shouted out, asking about Amo's whereabouts, but no one answered. Before leaving, Zhuading left behind a cryptic remark. Watching Zhuading's retreating figure, Zuzua was left with nothing but bitter resentment. Nighty, suspended in midair, suddenly recalled past memories. The powers Zhuading had given her helped her reclaim her true self. In that moment, she appeared so serene and beautiful. Now, I am a destruction specialist, a pawn existing only for you. Thus, I offer this hair, I offer everything I possess. I will never let you have your way. Explosions erupted all around as Nighty fought desperately, prepared to meet her end. She transformed her long hair into lightning-like strands, firing them in all directions. In an instant, the cleanup squad members were struck by the electric currents. The battle had reached its climax. Ironically, it was the villains who were stealing the show. At that moment, the beast spun wildly in the trash storm, charging straight toward the boundary. Nighty seemed to sense this. She unleashed her power relentlessly, suppressing the cleanup squad. If the monster broke through the boundary, she could send them all to their doom. As her hair pulled taut, an overwhelming surge of force erupted. The lightning bolt struck the cleanup squad members mercilessly, nearly paralyzing them. Shizua, writhing in pain on the ground, recalled past events. Static time could only last for 2 minutes. It seemed if this continued, her hair might not hold out. Watching Nighty push her body to the limit, still recklessly using her power, Shizua deeply regretted not finishing her off earlier. Suddenly, Nighty noticed someone still crawling slowly amidst her lightning. She couldn't understand how he was still moving. This was clearly the power she had traded her most precious possession for. It had to be destroyed, no matter the cost. That core had to be annihilated. The mechanical arm destroyed by Chizua's weapon was torn open by the trash storm, leaving a gaping hole. Nighty, standing closest to the exit, was swept away by an external force. Unable to control her body, she flew straight toward it. Though he managed to grab the edge of the opening just in time, he strained with all his might against the incredible suction force. But such power was never meant for mortals to resist. Looking back at the opening, Nighty's body was pulled away from the beast. What came into view was an unbelievably strange and wondrous sight. She never imagined the boundary realm could be so beautiful. Even if she set foot here, everything would be taken by Zhuading. The cleanup crew members were still struggling against the suction. Suddenly, a dark shadow flashed across Zuzua's vision. Then, Nighty's figure vanished from the opening. Zuzua felt puzzled. Why had the space suddenly turned pitch black? But now wasn't the time to worry about that. After the electric shock, they probably wouldn't last much longer. Before crossing the boundary, they had to find a way to deal with the beast. Just as everyone was about to use their secret weapon, Jita, who had been unconscious, suddenly woke up. Good thing you weren't blown away. What? What are you doing? You'll get sucked out. Find something to hold onto, quick. As you can see, this popular item might. What if we make it a little bigger? Go! With the obstruction gone, Nkue, Zuzua, and Zizua activated their popular treasures, destroying the core of the summoned beast. Zuzua also saw the item inside the core, a popular treasure crafted by Zhuading himself. Zhuading had already moved to a safe location, silently watching the awakening storm fade away. Benta suddenly raised a question. No one in history had ever survived breaking through a realm. So why was Zhuading so sure using that fake summoned beast would work? Zhuading looked up at the sky and answered calmly. Because that treasure once housed the power of protection. At that moment, the fake summoned beast shattered along with the sunlight piercing the clouds, falling from the sky. A violent earthquake suddenly struck beneath the cleanup team. Jita quickly grabbed the unconscious Jianggu. She told everyone to hold onto her tightly to lessen the impact of the landing. Just then, Zuz was suddenly spotted in Mo's shoe. The fake summoned beast plummeted toward the ground like an arrow released from a bow. Jita shattered its fading body, and Jianggu spread her arms and dove down. In the end, everyone managed to escape unharmed. With a deafening roar from the beast, Jita used the momentum to slam into the cliffside. They successfully landed in a massive junkyard. The group wearily leaned against the piles of debris. Zuzwa stared blankly at the shoe in his hand, still worried about Enmo's safety. Zhuading's words echoed in his mind again, inviting him to destroy the heavenly realm together, using summoned beasts to break through realms, and the guardian Qingxi he was protecting. At this thought, Zuzwa felt utterly exhausted. All he wanted now was something sweet to eat. That's right, just something sweet. I was so worried, but thankfully everyone is okay. A small detail was that Zwiding left without taking the boy who was confronting in Kuwei. This left the boy heartbroken and in tears, but suddenly a voice rang out, scolding him for being useless. The boy respectfully addressed the voice as Lord Shi, who wanted to switch places with him and take control of his body from then on. He harshly ordered the boy to get lost since he had been abandoned. It seemed this was another personality hidden within the boy. He was sure to surprise everyone in the future. Zuozuo's team also began treating their wounds. Seeing the massive claw marks left behind, Sanchi found it hard to believe that the Destruction faction could create such an enormous summoned beast. Though they had long known of their malicious intentions, no one expected them to dare invade the world. The question now was, how exactly had humans created the beast ring? Despite many unanswered mysteries, we must closely monitor every move of those destroyers. On the way back, something unexpected happened. I never thought anyone would dare challenge the cleanup crew. It hurts so much. My hand is ruined. I sincerely suggest you go to Alice Hospital in the neighboring town right away. You can thank me later. Returning to the cleanup crew headquarters. After resting and recovering, Zuozuo's team went to visit Zhang Ka, who was still bedridden due to Zebo's deadly poison. However, even Asia's energy couldn't fully eliminate the poison, as it was difficult to determine its spread. Fortunately, the poison wasn't life-threatening. But among the entire team, Zhang Ka was the most severely injured. This would likely deal a heavy blow to his self-esteem. Seeing Zuozuo hesitate to enter, Nguye understood Zhang Ka's personality and decisively pushed the door open. At that moment, Zhang Ka was holding his spiritual energy item, meditating to recover. Though Zhang Ka wasn't from the slums, nor had he been abused or abandoned. He had once been trapped in his own vicious cycle, sinking to the lowest depths of society. In the end, Zhang Ka pulled himself out of the mire and overcame his weakness. Someone who could persist in fighting against himself would never be defeated by such a small setback. Nguye always believed in Zhang Ka, convinced he would become someone beyond a genius. He will definitely become even stronger. Just then, a voice came through the communication device. Simiyu said that Gemlin from Canway Town wanted to apologize to Zhang Ka and also discuss something about the spell. Before the cleanup squad set off for the Forbidden Desert, Gemlin drew a spell on each of them to mitigate a single severe injury. However, when it was Zhang Ka's turn, Gemlin suddenly had an idea and drew an extremely peculiar spell on him instead. In other words, Zhang Ka didn't have a defensive spell on him at all. Instead, it was something completely different. So, that's the thing, could you do that motion again, Zhang Ka? Everyone thought Zhang Ka would lose his temper. Instead, he said the other party didn't need to apologize to him. The spell was only meant as a precaution. Zhang Ka never intended to rely on it in battle from the start. Getting hurt was simply because his strength wasn't enough. As long as he becomes stronger, all problems will solve themselves. Zhang Ka's words made all sympathy in Zuozuo's heart vanish. Instead, he learned something more from this senior. And gave him a warm smile. But that smile reminded Zhang Ka of some unpleasant memories. Kid, your elders clearly look down on me, don't they? You really see me in a different light. A different light? Who do you think you are, talking to me like that? Your brain must still be floating around in the celestial realm. You're nothing but a wet behind the ears brat. On the other hand, while Baden felt this mission was a complete failure, Zwiding insisted it was a resounding success. Even though they lost the fake beast, Needy, and that shoe. The real purpose of this trip was to verify if they could survive crossing the boundary. Now that all members of the cleanup squad have returned safely, the objective was achieved. As for the real beast needed to cross the boundary, Zwiding had already prepared it. All that's left is to focus on strengthening that item. Kuni mentioned Needy with concern, but Zwiding remained cold and indifferent. Needy was just a seed he planted long ago. Now that the flower has bloomed, the mission is complete. Then, Zwiding tossed the upgrade reward Bangdusi had been dreaming of to him. This item meant a great deal to Bangdusi. With this, Bangdusi officially passed the destroyer's trial and became a member of the elite army. Bangdusi's first mission after joining the professional destroyers was to investigate those communication devices. Zwiding was certain these devices were made by someone who possessed a popular item. And that person's power was so vast it spanned the entire lower realm. It's highly likely that members of the Guardian Saints Order created them. Bondis's mission is to uncover the identities of those behind these communication devices. As for the shoe taken by the cleanup crew, Zwiding couldn't care less. This is preparation for the upcoming assault on the heavenly realm from the lower realm. The captain of the cleanup crew, Gong Basu, assigns Zuozuo an extremely important task. That is to lead Dia, Jita, and Zemlin on an outing to Canwake Town. Among the four, Zuozuo is the oldest, so he must take responsibility for protecting his companions. Their first stop is Cave Town, where they will purchase pigments for Zemlin's murals. Ingingkue and Bodo were secretly observing them through a telescope. Although the four performed well in battles against beasts, Due to the recent second attack by the professional saboteurs, Gong Basu clearly wanted to use these 4 children as bait to lure the saboteurs out again. But they would never be foolish enough to walk into a trap. If there's danger, Ing Kuei will step in to help immediately. Just then, Ing Kuei suddenly noticed a boy hiding in a nearby corner. The lower realm security maintenance units from various bureaus had arrived at the cleanup crew headquarters. Leading the 4th squad was Minyao's sister, Chuaka. Only now did Xiamu realize that Gong Basu had sent Zhu away to avoid contact with the guard units. The real purpose of Chuaka's visit was to take Zhu away. For the future of the lower realm and the safety of all their people, the 4th squad needed to gather all intelligence about the heavenly realm. From history and the insectoid race to genetic structures, they had to thoroughly investigate everything. More importantly, they needed to uncover the true relationship between the heavenly realm and the lower realm. Zhuoka hoped their generation could fill in these gaps. But Gong Basu was not swayed by these ideals. He flatly refused Zhuoka's request because Zhu was now an official member of the cleanup crew and had performed exceptionally well. Besides, Zhu had not committed any crimes in the lower realm. So the 4th squad had no valid reason to take him away. Moreover, condemning and pressuring innocent people based solely on their insectoid lineage went against the ideals left by the 4th squad's predecessors. Meanwhile, Zhu's 4-person team had arrived at Cave Town. The ink here is famous for being made from special fats mined deep within the caves. After processing, it becomes ink that retains its color and does not spoil. With countless other fascinating attractions, the presence of a group of children here was like an open invitation for kidnappers. For Zhu, this was his chance to step up as the responsible older brother. However, the ice cream stand by the road immediately exposed Zhu's true nature, his love for sweets. He had fully reverted to his age-appropriate innocent appearance. A boy from the Destruction faction had secretly followed them here. Seeing the 4 of them completely enchanted by sweets, he couldn't help but recall how he had been abandoned by Yueding. Just as he was crying out, he was suddenly interrupted by Giggle Master. The figure said that since they had found the next host, it would be best to get close to them quickly. At this thought, the boy instantly perked up. Before, he had always followed others' orders. Now, after being abandoned by Yueding, he would live for Lord Inkue. Just as he was about to approach Zhu and the others, he noticed Zhu was completely entranced by the sweets. Zhu, what's wrong with you? After finishing the ice cream, he acted as if he had lost his mind. No more sweets, Zhu. The 3 of them struggled to hold him back. What Zhu did next made the boy in the distance shudder with fear. Just then, a strange man appeared and asked if they wanted more sweets. He said he had plenty and that they could follow him if they wanted some. Hearing this, Zhu immediately perked up and tried to follow. But the man didn't know one thing: Ruzu wasn't just good at finding trash, his ability to sniff out sweets was even sharper than a professional sniffer dog. There wasn't a single whiff of dessert in the air. This creepy old man is trying to trick us. After buying the paints, Jemlin collapsed to the ground from exhaustion, unable to get up. After all, Cave Town was a full 16 kilometers away, and their group had walked the entire distance. Meanwhile, the cleanup crew members still seemed full of energy. This was the result of their frequent training on massive garbage mountains. It had made their endurance incredibly strong. If Jemlin wanted to become an excellent cursed painter, he would need to train harder. The task Jemlin was about to complete was a tradition passed down through generations of cursed painters, leaving his own work on this legendary stone wall. This was both a tradition and a way to commemorate their legacy. Jemlin asked Rozu what came to mind first when he thought of murals. Of course, paintings drawn directly on walls. But then Jemlin pointed upward. Following his finger, Rozu slowly looked up and saw countless vibrant works painted with different brushes and colors on the cave ceiling. Ruzu couldn't believe these were the murals left behind by generations of cursed painters through their hard work. And Gui and Bodu had also arrived in Kawa town. And the boy had secretly followed them here. The murals on the cave ceiling were all created by past masters based on the ideas and backgrounds of their eras. This is how Kawa town records its glorious history. Jemlin needs to paint at the very end, while across from him is the work of the first cursed painter, Makaka. This journey also allowed Angue and Ruzu to uncover a secret. This painting is not only ancient, but it also contains an astonishing amount of information. Why is that symbol here? It's identical to the mark on guard Qingxi, and the same as the one on my glove. Is that kid a fan of the ancient ritual cult? A ritual? No, that's not it. Don't you know? The symbol in that painting belongs to one of Makaka's closest friends, Kanisa Suowa, a member of that cult. I'm Ruzu Suowa. On the mural of the curse painters, besides guard Qingxi's symbol, there are other marks. And that eye symbol is the same as the mark on Gong Besa's neck. It's likely deeply connected to the first curse master and even Ruzu's ancestors. The first part of our journey officially comes to a close. Let's look forward to even more exciting developments ahead.